go. 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski, Spencer Dupuis, our summer intern, Trenton Craxton are all here with you today. Dan Lucero is off again this afternoon on paternity leave. We are here with you until 6 o'clock this evening. A full show coming your way on the program today. We'll get to some Royals baseball here in just a second. Day off yesterday, a much-needed rest day for the boys in blue before they begin a very winnable, not just next 54 games as we talked about yesterday, but really, if you want to break down the entire rest of the season, 89 games left. And the Royals, I think, have a chance to win a whole lot of them. We'll break it down coming up here in just a moment. Plus, JJ Picollo spoke this week about what the Royals could be looking for at the trade deadline come July 30th. We'll get to that coming up here in this opening hour. Also, a really bad trade idea from one major sports website for the Kansas City Chiefs. And the NBA Finals ended last night. We'll get to the game itself in our playoff roundup, but one thing I noticed that the NBA does so terribly that the NFL does better than absolutely anybody. We'll tell you what that is here in just a little bit in this opening hour of the show. Also, today we'll go around the NFL in the 3 o'clock hour, as we will get to some major roster holes remaining, according to a list from NFL.com. And The Athletic has their list of offseason winners or losers. And I got to be frank, the Chiefs' placement or lack thereof on that list is surprising to me. So that'll come up in the 3 o'clock hour today. We'll also get to our lingering offseason questions for the Big 12. We did that for the Chiefs earlier this month. In fact, it was last week. So we'll do the same thing for KU, K-State, and the rest of the Big 12 in the 4 o'clock hour. Great guest list today. Michael Swain will join us 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly, as he does every Tuesday afternoon. And Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, college football writer, is going to stop by to talk all things Big 12 football with us at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour today. We've also got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll preview Royals versus A's Game 1 tonight. Alec Marsh pitching against someone that is not real. This is a fake person. Hogan Harris is not a real person. I refuse to believe that is a real guy. That's your pitching matchup for tonight, Royals versus A's. We have What Is Wrong With You? We've got Random Question Tuesday. All of it is coming up today on 580 Sports Talk. You know how to get involved in the show. You can either send us a text on the Top City Metal Supply text line. That number is 785-272-9429. Or you can go check us out on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is, of course, the name of the YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, search 580 Sports Talk. You'll find us there. Don't forget to subscribe when you go and check out the channel today. Also, really quickly, want to remind you that there's no more wasted money on metal pieces that leave you with unnecessary leftovers when you work with Top City Metal Supply. They'll cut the exact lengths of aluminum, steel, and stainless steel you need, tailored to your project specifications. Start optimizing your budget with Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, just north of Forbes Field. Don't forget our show today. As you can see, if you're watching on the video stream, just to my left, just behind me from the camera angle, we are coming to you live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio today. The Royals were off yesterday, an off day following a 2-5 7-game stretch against the Yankees and the Dodgers. That's understandable. You're not too broken up over that. But the Royals now enter today and enter their series with the A's up in Oakland at the Coliseum with a record of 41-32. That is a winning percentage of .562, which, if you break that down over 162 games, would be a final record of 91-71. And for what it is worth, and I think this is important information, or an important reference point anyway. Last year, 6 playoff teams in the American League, 2 of them had more than 91 wins. All of 2 of those teams. And the other 4 included 2 division winners and 2 wild cards. The 2 teams that came out of the AL East are the only ones that actually finished last year with more than 91 wins, including Baltimore, which won over 100 games. In fact, the Twins won the AL Central last year, as you may remember, with 87 wins. I think, for what it's worth, the Guardians, who are in the driver's seat right now, they're likely going to finish with more than 87 wins to win the division this year. But that tells you that, without a doubt, the Royals are right in the thick of the playoff hunt, even if you have some concerns about the bottom of the order, even if you have some concerns about the bullpen, all understandable. They're in the middle of this playoff hunt, which tells you the strides they've taken. It also tells you just how much development some of these star players like Bobby Witt Jr., and not even the young guys, like a Salvi, who has taken another step forward in so many ways, even though he's cooled off at the plate quite a bit recently. They're in the middle of this. They've got 89 games left. They've so far played 73 games this year. They have 89 left this season. David Lesky over at Inside the Crown broke it down this way. You've got 18 games remaining against who he calls the worst of the worst. That's the White Sox, against whom you have 6 left, if I'm not mistaken. The Rockies, the Angels, the Marlins, and of course, the A's. That's 18 against the worst of the worst. 45 games against teams in the vague area around 500. So Arizona, Boston, the Cubs, the Reds, the Tigers, Houston, Pittsburgh, the Giants, Cardinals, Rays, Rangers, and Nationals. Hey, not the worst of the worst. Happy for the Nationals.
Yeah, they're lucky. They've turned a corner, I think.
And then you've got 26 games against teams that David Lesky says are just good teams. Atlanta, Cleveland, Minnesota, the Yankees, and the Phillies. Yankees and Phillies, the best records in their respective leagues. The Braves they got a lot of talent.
I think by the time they face them at the last week of the season, we might not be talking about them as a good team. They might be an above average team, but not a good team.
Yeah, they might be falling a little further down toward that near 500 group, more so than hanging around with the Phillies, Dodgers teams at the very top like that. So those are the 3 ways that David Lesky breaks this down. Knowing what that schedule looks like and who you have to play, and we don't have the home and road splits here, but knowing who you have to play, knowing you have 89 games left, to get to 91 wins, you'd have to go 50-39 the rest of the way. So you would have to win, if I do my math here quickly, 56.2% of your games the rest of the way, matching your percentage so far. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Knowing you have this many games against terrible, average, and good teams the rest of the way, do you think that 50-39 is an attainable and reasonable goal for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should take at least 14 out of 18 against the worst of the worst. Clear, you're not going to win every game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just not how it works.
No.
Like, they probably are going to lose a game to the Athletics. Like, that's just a fact.
In all likelihood, there aren't a ton of sweeps.
Yeah, like, just sweeping is such a hard thing to do in this league that I think 14 out of 18 is a good number to put there. And then I think if you go 28 and what would that be? 28 out of 45 against teams in the vague area.
That'd be like 28-17.
Yeah. And then you go,
I would even assume lower than, but go ahead, continue. I'll add.
Then around 12 to 16 is where I'd go out of the 26, somewhere in that range. And that just I'm depending on where Atlanta is at the end of the year. What are they doing at that last series of what are the Royals doing at that last series? Like, have they already locked up the wild card? So those 3 games are kind of an iffy, like, and then the Nationals, like, by the time you get to those final 2 series, where are you?
So based on that, what'd you say? 14 wins out of 18 against the crappy teams?
Yeah.
27 out of 45. Is that the number you gave? 27? 28. Okay. 28 of the 45. And then another, what was the number you gave? 12?
Yeah.
For the good teams. That'd give you 54 more wins the rest of the year. So that would be then 54-35. You could get 54 wins in these final 89. I think you'd be thrilled. I think that's probably your somewhere in the neighborhood of best case scenario, because that's above what you've done so far. I would probably be a little more bearish than that. Give me, breaking it down by these groups again, I'll say 13-5 against those terrible teams. I would give the Royals maybe, they've played well enough. They should win more than half of those 45 games. So I'll say they go 26-19 against those against the average teams. And then against the good teams, I think the Royals should be able to at least hold their own if they think they're, similar, a similar caliber of team. So I'll say the same number as you. I'll go 12. I'll say 12-14 against the best and the best. That's 51 wins for me. Like that.
So that's roughly a few games.
Right. So that feels
Yeah.
That feels right. Like
Yeah.
that they should win the vast majority against the bad teams. Like if they suddenly lose, 5 of the 6 they play against the White Sox the rest of the way,
and then get swept by the Rockies.
yeah, I'm suddenly going to feel like, what happened?
Yeah.
Where's this coming from? That would leave me very concerned.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think that's going to end up happening, though. I mean, these numbers feel reasonable. Trenton, I'll ask you the same thing. When you look at the way this is broken down, and again, we're using this info from David Lesky at Inside the Crown and how he broke down the rest of the schedule. Does around 50 wins sound about right for what this team should be able to accomplish the rest of the way?
Yeah, because even if you take 13 or 14 against the bad teams, you then take that out, the Royals would have to go 37 and 32 against the other two groups, or if you go 14 and 4, they have to go 36 and 35 against the other two groups of teams. So if you just feast on the really bad teams, you just have to play 500 ball the rest of the way to acquire 91 wins. That seems fair.
I would think that probably, even though I think the AL is better this year than it was last year, that should still be enough to keep you right in the hunt to the very end.
Yeah.
Playoff wise. I mean, I would expect so. Where do you think the division winner is going to be this year? Not necessarily who between the Royals, Twins, and the leader, the Guardians. What do you think that win total is probably going to look like? Trenton, I'll start with you.
I'd say about 93.
93. Okay, so a sizable increase from last year then.
Yeah, because the Guardians already have like 44, 45 wins. So
yeah, what are the Guardians on pace for this year? I got to go check that out.
I was going to say 96, and that seems to be what they'd probably be on pace for, right?
The Guardians right now, imagine if I could spell Guardian. That would help me out quite a bit.
Same thing.
When I'm typing at a normal pace, I'm pretty good at it. When I'm trying to rush, it always goes poorly. So they right now are 44 and 25. How have they played such a small number of games? So they've won 44 out of their 69 games. Extrapolate that over a full season. Yeah, I mean, shoot, they're on pace for 100 wins at this point, 103 wins at this point with that winning percentage. I don't think they are going to get there. Somewhere in the mid 90s, I think, is probably where they end up. By the way, in terms of their,
they have the third hardest schedule out of anyone in the MLB from this point on. They haven't played the Dodgers yet. They haven't played the Phillies. They have to play the Yankees again. Like, their schedule is pretty bad. Like, they're going to be facing a gauntlet the rest of the way almost.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I was going to say they're pretty much right on expectation in terms of runs allowed and runs scored. They're, Pythagorean win-loss. I know that's a big word, but we've talked about this many times before. You take your runs scored for the year, your runs allowed, you throw it into a formula, what's your projected win-loss total? They're one game above projection. So they're almost spot on with that at this point. They're legitimately good. I did not think they were going to be this good. They are legitimately good at this point, though. I think probably mid 90s because, it's an interesting point. You talk about how brutal the schedule is, but you just sort of have to base it on what we've already seen from them this year, right? And assume that, hey, they have played like one of the best teams in baseball. So you would think, or at least you have to give them the benefit of the doubt for now, that they will play at least, somewhat equally with the other best teams in baseball.
Yeah, but they've played half their 13 games against the White Sox. Their series with the Marlins, their series with the Rockies. I think they've completed their series with the A's. I know they've played the Angels at least one of those series. So I think they're a little bit ahead on the really bad teams on the Royals right now because they've already got the Rockies and Marlins out of the way.
What? Oh, go ahead.
So I think they're playing they start with the Mariners. They started a series with the Mariners. I don't think they played the Mariners at all. And the Mariners are hot right now. They're winning the West by like 8 games.
Yeah.
So they might be running into a buzzsaw this week.
The upcoming schedule, they've got 3 with Seattle at home, 3 with Toronto at home. Then they've got to go to Baltimore and then 4 in Kansas City. The rest of this month for Cleveland is huge. That is, and even beyond that, they ease up. They have 3 at home against the White Sox after that. But the rest of this month, when you look at those, what would that be, 13 games the rest of the way, that's going to tell us a lot about this Cleveland team and how good they can be this year, I think.
I don't think they've played the Orioles this year, and the Royals have already played their 2 series with the Orioles. So now that you say Baltimore, that reminds me, I don't think they've played Baltimore at all this year. So
you are correct about that, Trenton. They play Baltimore again the 24th through the 26th of this month. That is on the road. That's going to be a tough series. And then they get them at home for 4 the first week of August 1st through the 4th.
They got to go Baltimore on the road and then come to Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is both going to A, be a tough test for Cleveland, but B, be a major test as well for Kansas City. Can you, if you could take 3 out of 4 in that series, that would be especially encouraging. But if you could at least get a split at home with Cleveland, you're feeling okay as we head into the month of July.
They do play the Tigers a lot.
The Guardians do?
Yeah.
The Tigers are really up and down.
Yeah, they have 10 games against the Tigers just in the month of July alone.
Good Lord.
The Tigers, this is fully self-serving just for a moment. The Tigers preseason win-loss total was 81.5. I hammered that under because I thought there's absolutely no way. And then everybody told me, well, actually, they're supposed to be a lot better. They're currently 4 under, so I'm feeling okay right now.
They're just really up and down. Like, they're one of those teams around 500 that are really up and down. But that same week that the Guardians play Baltimore, the Royals are playing the Marlins those 3 games. So, while they're going to war, essentially, with the Orioles, probably the Royals are playing a team that's lost almost 50 games already this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, the build-up, the Royals shouldn't be worrying necessarily, like they shouldn't be, man, the bullpen's taxed because we just played the Marlins because they're not that good.
Yeah. I also think, just real quick, regarding the Tigers, just because I have them pulled up, that's not a pushover team. I mean, they've got something that everybody wants. And that's great starting pitching. I mean, they've got 3 pitchers. Skubal is awesome. He has been sensational this year. Flaherty is having a real bounce back campaign. He's got an ERA right at 3. Reese Olson's had a good year. I mean, the numbers look good. He's only 1-8. That tells you all you need to know about pitcher win-loss. Then Casey Mize has been right around average as your 4th starter. That's pretty good. All those dudes are 28 or younger from that group. Their offense is horrible.
Well, I think, too, if you look at their month of August, they have 4 off days. But out of 31 days, they still play 29 games.
They have multiple doubleheaders?
Yeah, they have to play that game against the Royals that was postponed.
That's true.
On the 26th, coming off of what is it? They're in New York the 20th through the 22nd. Then they're at home against the Rangers and then the Royals. So that's 3, 6, 9, 10 games in just over 8 days. And then they have an off day between them playing Minnesota twice on the 9th. That's the 4-game series and then the 3-game series against the Cubs. So
the opportunity's there for the Royals to make a run here.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, the crazy thing is that the Royals have played 4 more games than the Guardians. The Guardians get 2 days off every week, because they were off yesterday too, and the Royals were. So the Royals are 5 games back, but 2 of those games that separates them is just because the Royals have played 4 more games.
That's so strange. That also tells me we're going to hit a part of this Royal season where things really slow down. It's now going to be 2 years in a row in September that it happens. And it's nice because then we get to air a bunch of Thursday night high school football on our airwaves. So for work purposes, I'm cool with it. But I think, like last year, I'm pretty sure the Royals went 4 out of 5 Thursdays to end the year without having a game. And I think it's something similar this year where they go 3 straight Thursdays without a game. It's very strange.
They go 3 straight Thursdays in the month of July. Actually, 4, because they go July 11th, 18th, 25th, and then the 1st of August, they don't have a game. Or yeah, they do, excuse me. Never mind. I was
still 3 straight, and then a few at the end of the year as
and
well.
Then 3 straight, and then 3 straight.
That's
so
weird.
Each of the last 3 months, they have 3 Thursdays off.
That's something is wrong with that schedule making. That should not be that way because it was the same way last year. I don't know why it is still the same way.
And then they have the 2 final wide. Well, that's the last day of the Major League season. Never mind. The last day of the Major League season, I believe, is the 29th of September.
Yeah, it ends in September this year.
Yeah. So then, but they have the 23rd and 30th where they have no games, both Mondays. But that's the last. That doesn't count.
Well, and the Royals, like the last 6 or 9 games, the Royals plays interleague games. They're not even playing division.
Yeah, if you want,
which is stupid.
You want to talk about something that pisses me off? Oh my God! Why are the Royals playing the Braves to end the year?
They play the Nationals before that.
They have 9 division games in the month.
Ridiculous.
And 6 of those come in the first 8 days, and then they play Detroit 16th, 17th, 18th.
Absolutely ridiculous. I do want to get to this real quick while we're talking about playoff push for this Royals team. JJ Piccolo was a guest on Jason Stark's podcast over at The Athletic, the Wind Up podcast with Jason Stark and the great Doug Glanville, talking about this Royals season, all the money they gave away, the extension for Bobby Witt, all of these things. It's a really good in-depth interview. It's about 45 minutes long. I appreciate JJ Picollo a lot more than I appreciate his predecessor, or appreciated his predecessor. But Picollo does go on to talk a little bit about the bullpen. Here we go. Quote, some of our relief corps is starting to pitch to the capabilities and abilities we've seen in the past. That's going to be helpful, which will help put pieces of the puzzle together. But getting deeper in our bullpen to come alongside of those guys, I think, would be great. Whether or not it's a closer, that's going to be very difficult for anybody. There's only going to be so many of them, and the competition will be steep. But if we can get deeper and be more reliable in our bullpen, that would be great. I've talked in the past about strikeouts. We're more of a matchup bullpen without necessarily the big power. Now, we do have a couple guys we think might fit the bill internally, but we haven't done it quite yet. And that would include Trenton, the guy you were talking to us about yesterday, I believe it was. Maybe it was earlier this week down in Omaha. Who am I thinking of here? What's his name?
Walter Pennington?
Walter Pennington, thank you. Maybe that's the kind of guy he's talking about here, where you go and you add an arm, try to get someone who can miss a few more bats. Understandable. This also does tell me, though, and I appreciate this, because baseball GMs, more than any other GM, I think, are willing to give away the game and to say, like, oh, yeah, no, we're content. Like the idiot Chicago Cubs, they do this all the time. Like, oh, no, we're content. We got the guys we need. I appreciate Picollo going out and saying, yeah, we're going to look for some people. We know it's going to be steep, but we do want to add depth to the bullpen. Yes, that is what the Royals need. I think for me, getting someone in the back end of the bullpen, if you could get a legit closer, whether it's, probably not Mason Miller, but someone like that, a legitimate closer, I would be stoked about that. But the bare minimum, you've got to go get someone or someone's else who you can throw out there and say, we can rely on them to go out and pitch every other day or every third day, whatever we need them for, and they are not going to totally give the game away. That is something I think that the Royals really have to get. And if it turns out it's Walter Pennington as the guy in-house who can miss bats, and then you move a double-A prospect, a top 20 prospect to go get another arm who can work in the middle of your bullpen, great. Awesome. You're going to overpower guys a little bit more. You're going to go get a little bit more stability. Totally fine with me. I can live with that. So I appreciate JJ Picollo coming out and saying that is something that they do want to get in their bullpen. It's also obvious that they want to add a bat here. Picollo goes on to say, offensively, you always want to add a bat somewhere to lengthen your lineup. We have 3 or 4 guys in the lineup every day, and we mix and match a lot, so it doesn't necessarily have to be an outfielder, but somebody who could play outfield and infield would be ideal. Just another bat that we could lengthen our lineup out and get a little more production in the back half of our lineup. So essentially he's saying, what if we went out and got Adam Frazier, but actually good? That's what that sentence tells me right there. Lengthen the lineup, can play outfield and infield. Pretty valuable. And we know how bad the bottom of the Royals roster is. In fact, this is a great stat. I mean, it's terrible, but it's a great piece of information. No team in Major League Baseball has received less production from its outfield than the 2024 Royals. We gave you this stat a few weeks ago. It has only gotten worse. That collective has turned in a 210 batting average, 271 on base, and a 345 slugging percentage. That result is a 72 WRC plus. That's weighted runs created. 100 is league average. They are 28% worse than the league average. And that's like when the bright spot would be maybe 201 hitting Hunter Renfroe can come back sooner than you thought. Yeah, that tells you need a bat. So I appreciate that Picollo very obviously wants to get something done here. That's a better space to be in than a lot of the average front offices or teams in baseball who just say, yeah, I mean, we'll see. No, the Royals are committed. We want to make this team better. That is a very valuable thing, and I'm glad they're following through on that. We'll talk more Royals baseball later on in the show today as we get ready for the series opener between the Boys in Blue and the Oakland A's. But coming up on the other side of this commercial break, the NBA Finals ended last night. The Celtics won. But secondarily to the game, last night was a great example of why the NFL continues to be king and how they make everything feel like a big deal, while last night's game felt like any other January regular season contest. I'll explain what I mean coming up on 580 Sports Talk. We're just getting started on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan, Spencer, and Trenton with you live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. We'll talk some college football in the 3 o'clock hour with Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. Also, we'll talk all things KU for Jayhawk Weekly with Michael Swain in the 4 o'clock hour of the show today. Coleman Hawkins officially signed with K-State today, put his name on the dotted line. We've got a quote here from Jerome Tang, head coach of K-State basketball. It's a great day to be a Wildcat as we're excited to welcome Coleman and his family to K-State. He is a winner. He has won everywhere he has been, whether it's a national championship in high school to winning 4 Big Ten titles and going to 4 NCAA tournaments, including the Elite Eight this past season at Illinois. He obviously can score, but he impacts winning in a variety of ways. He is a terrific teammate who is very smart and only makes his teammates better. He plays with joy and passion, emphasis because he put it in all caps, and passion, and has an engaging personality that I know our fans are going to love. So that is Jerome Tang on the newest and final Wildcat for this season, Coleman Hawkins. Talked about that a little bit yesterday. If you missed our talk about the final rosters for KU and K-State basketball, go check out the podcast page at our website, 580WIBW.com.
Do you think that Jerome Tang ever gets tired of reading or seeing it's a great day to be a Wildcat? Like hearing the quote of it. Like if somebody were to like make a montage of him saying it. It seems like basketball coaches always have like the one phrase they use, and that's his phrase.
Yeah, I mean it's been a very effective way to rally the troops, so to speak, and to get people behind the program. So I assume as long as people keep coming out and supporting and donating to NIL and saying it, I'm sure he's cool with it. But, I do imagine there's probably once in a while where it's, all right, I got to say it. Don't forget the line. It's the meme from The Simpsons. Say the line, Bart. I think that's Jerome Tang with it's a great day to be a Wildcat.
I just thought about it because like when I was in college and I was calling Marshall games and whenever I talked to Dan D'Antoni, we'd always ask him if there was anything else he wanted to let our listeners know, and he would just say, "Go Herd." And I got bored during COVID, and I created a montage of him saying, "And go Herd."
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention this from last night. So the NBA Finals ended. Boston Celtics, they won. They cruised past the Mavericks yesterday. And, in fact, Shehan Jeyarajah, who we'll talk to about college football later, he was mentioning this on Twitter last night. Now that it's over, you kind of have a great perspective on how it was covered and the reactions to the way it ended and the finals themselves and all of that. It felt like a big old nothing burger. And I don't know if that's an ESPN problem. I don't know if that's an NBA problem.
I mean, they got a lot of problems.
Well,
ESPN does.
Well, yes,
when
they
it
do.
comes to the actual game.
But, and here's the thing. Because, yes, you're right. Like, their halftime show is about 90 seconds of actual talk. It's a few moments of Stephen A. Smith screaming, and then it's a lot of commercials.
And then their broadcast itself is just...
Yeah, Doris...
Quality-wise. I wasn't talking about people. I was just talking about
I'll talk about the people.
Quality.
Like, Doris Burke is boring, and J.J. Redick sucks. I'm glad he's going to leave for the Lakers, because he sucks on TV. I think he is so smarmy, but that's a conversation for a different day. This is another example of the NFL and why they are the dominant league in American sports. There's a lot of reasons why. Our obsession with the sport of football, the scarcity of everybody's team only playing once a week, all of that plays into it. But the Super Bowl feels like it is life or death. Everything the NFL does feels like it's life or death. Everything. They have multi-hour-long specials to announce the schedule release. They bring out every single NFL personality for days after the fact on ESPN, NFL Network, CBS Sports HQ, all these other places. We talk about it for a week on our show. It is a huge deal. The schedule is out. Everything is a major deal. They have turned the draft. They have turned a conference call into one of the biggest weekends in American professional sports. It's a conference call. They read names off a note card for 3 days, and it is a huge thing. I've been there. I was at the draft in Kansas City. Jake and I went for day one. It is a madhouse. It was crazy in Detroit. It's going to be crazy in Green Bay, Wisconsin, of all places, this coming year. Like, it's huge. Everything the NFL does is huge. If you had told me that they just played a random 5-game series in the middle of January, you would have gotten the same level of pageantry from the NBA regarding these finals. There was a clip of Bob Costas. And let me be upfront about this. I'm not a Bob Costas fan. You want to talk about smarmy? I think Bob Costas loves the smell of his own backside more than anybody else. Nobody loves Bob Costas the way Bob Costas loves Bob Costas. But that being said, there was a video going around on social media the other day from, I think it was the 98 NBA Finals. And it was before one of the games. It might have even been game 6. And Costas is going on and on and on about all, why this matters. And this might be it for Michael Jordan and what this means for the Bulls' legacy. Can the Jazz finally do it and win a title for Stockton and Malone and that era of Jazz basketball? All these big, grandiose things felt like, whoa, this is huge. This is massive. I know you're not a huge NBA fan, Spencer, but have you heard anything in the last 3 weeks as we were getting close to the finals? Anything like, man, this is going to be huge. If Jason Tatum wins, he's going to etch himself in history, the greatest NBA franchise ever. He's going to be on, he's going to etch his legacy permanently for them, or all of this. This is what it means for Boston, for the city, for the franchise, all of that. Whereas for Dallas, it's the true second, the new crowning after Dirk was the guy for forever and he finally won his title. It's Luka's turn to do the same thing in the same sort of vein for Dallas. Any of that? No, you don't.
The only thing I heard last night after the game was Brad Stevens can do it as a GM, better as a GM than he probably is a coach. And then from the circles that I follow, Joe Mazzulla being a D2 assistant coach.
Yeah.
And then going to be an NBA coach and winning. That's about it.
So I would love to know why that's no longer a part. Like, you could have done so much stuff about the growth of Joe Mazzulla. They showed one graphic during the game when it was already decided. One graphic. Like, hey, Glenville State, hey.
Too commercialized.
I mean, it's just, even beyond that, though, like, you're the National Basketball Association. Like, ESPN's basketball coverage is crap. It's garbage. You are the NBA. They should have, for the last 3 weeks, every single time you opened any sports-related website, you should have been punched in the face with this is why this is important. Because the NFL does that all the time. The NBA is like, That's what happens when you market your product to 12-year-olds. Seriously, I mean that entirely. 12-year-olds who've never actually played a sport.
I saw multiple tweets over the last week or so. I guess it would have been end of last week, before game 4, right? Or before game 3. Can't wait for the NBA finals to get over so I can actually pay attention to hockey and maybe a Canada team will win for the first time in however many years.
The NHL has this problem too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, but like people seemed more excited for the NHL Stanley Cup finals a little bit than the NBA finals.
It's
at least the sports personalities that I followed.
It's just so
they wanted to talk about it more.
I don't understand why you wouldn't. And I care about the NFL more than I care about the NBA. And I know we don't live in an NBA market. Maybe, maybe it'd be different if we still had the Kansas City Kings and we were talking about this. But it is just such a strange phenomenon that they don't want you to feel like this is a big deal. The biggest thing we had leading up to the game was video of Stephen A. Smith walking into the Boston Garden.
Yeah, what in the
Who
world
cares?
is that?
Tell me about why this is a big deal for Jaylen Brown. Tell me more about the historical relevance of this. I don't care about Stephen A., man. I just don't understand it. But hey, they want to do their thing and cater to people who pay for Twitter and kids who still have a bedtime from their parents. Go for it. That's what you want to market to? Go for it. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Speaking of the NFL, when we come back after this commercial break, we will get to yet another very dumb trade idea involving the Kansas City Chiefs. That's coming up on the other side of this timeout. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk on 580 WIBW. 580 Sports Talk rolls on live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. Don't forget to hit us up on the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. You can also do so on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. Bleacher Report's at it again, folks. They just cannot help themselves. This is Gary Davenport of Bleacher Report, who put together two recent lists. One of one player each NFL team should consider trading before the start of the season. And the other one is 8 trades that could shake up the postseason. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right away, most all of this is just very bad and also just sort of illustrates not really knowing a whole lot about how football works or about how the NFL works. The one, in terms of one player each team should consider trading for the Chiefs, wide receiver Sky Moore.
He has trade value?
Exactly.
That's news to me.
I'm sure the Chiefs would love to trade Sky Moore. For what? Who is acquiring him?
Player to be named later, 7th round pick.
The Kansas City Chiefs, this is his writing, aren't exactly a team that impresses as being in a selling mood. What is that sentence? What is that? The team is attempting to become the first franchise to win 3 straight Super Bowls. And given the Chiefs' struggles at wide receiver, it's harder to imagine them dealing a player at that position. Wrong. That it's very easy to imagine them without Sky Moore. He didn't do anything at the end of the year, except Kadarius Toney. Again, I'd rather have Toney than Moore. Has this dude ever watched the Chiefs in his life? I'm going to guess no. After adding Rashee Rice last year and veteran Hollywood Brown and rookie Xavier Worthy this year, the Chiefs wide receiver room looks a lot different, and that affords Kansas City the opportunity to rid themselves of another mistake from the past few years. They drafted Sky Moore in the 22 second round. He's been a disappointment to date. If Veach can get another team to believe that there's something left in Sky Moore, Kansas City should get what they can and move on. They can't, or they would. Come on. Give me a break. The other one here, and he kind of double dips on this. Jacksonville, his player to trade is offensive tackle Cam Robinson. In his other piece about 8 trades that could shake up the postseason, he says Cam Robinson to the Chiefs. I would love for anyone who covers the NFL nationally, who blogs about the NFL, who is in any way going to connect the Chiefs to something they are writing or producing content-wise. Listen to 580 Sports Talk. Listen to us talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Listen to people who are on the ground. The Chiefs are done at left tackle. They have a battle. They have been very clear. It is going to be Wanye Morris or it is going to be Kingsley Suamataia. Unless someone gets hurt, in which case maybe they go out and they pick up a veteran as a temporary replacement. That is the battle. That is the head-to-head matchup for left tackle. The reason that that's the biggest remaining offseason question for the Chiefs is because we won't find out until training camp ends who wins the left tackle job. Why are we continuing to say the Chiefs are going to go trade for someone else? That's not going to happen. It's just not.
I don't know. You go through this whole list, specifically the one player each team, and it's like, first of all, these teams would never trade the player, and 2, some of these contracts are like untradeable unless the team takes the latter half. Like specifically for the team that I like, the Commanders, they're not trading John Allen.
No, wasn't he just recently re-signed?
Yeah.
That's
not
what
only
I thought.
was he re-signed, he's literally from the area. Like, he doesn't want to leave.
I don't understand why we continue to do this. The Chiefs are the team that everyone does this with. It has been going on for years. And I'd be remiss if I did not say we were part of that at one point in time. We talked, I couldn't even tell you how many segments, how many minutes during 2018, 19 into 20 about the idea of Patrick Peterson becoming a Kansas City Chief. We talked about that on this show maybe daily leading up to the trade deadline for a couple of weeks back in 2019. It came up constantly. But we have had enough of the Brett Veach era, of the Andy Reid era, of the Patrick Mahomes era to know this isn't how the Chiefs operate, guys. It's not. Trades on the margins, sure. 1 or 2 big splash moves in free agency a year, sure. Moving around, wheeling and dealing during the draft, yup, Brett Veach staples. They're not just going to trade for a guy, though, to say that they've traded for a guy. Listen to the coverage. Listen to what the team is telling you. They are going to stick with Kingsley Suamataia, or they are going to stick with Wanye Morris. It's going to be one of the others. And right or wrong, that's what they are going to do. That is how they are going to end up approaching it. And for what it's worth, that is the right thing to do. I would rather have either of those guys than Donovan Smith this year. Or whoever else you want to throw in there. I don't know. We saw David Bakhtiari's name pop up last week, right? As, this is a guy the Chiefs could go after. No, that's not what they're going to do. They're going to stick with these guys. They're going to stick with their guys. That is what the Chiefs always do. Wheel and deal in the draft? Yes. Go trade for a tackle just because? Probably not. Not when they've already telegraphed exactly what the plan is. When they went out and traded for Orlando Brown a couple of years ago and got a real sweetheart deal out of it too, effectively only moving back a handful of spots between the first and the second round in order to get a starting left tackle, which was a crazy deal at the time for a guy who was good, helped the Chiefs win a Super Bowl in 2022, Orlando Brown. There was no obvious concrete telegraphed plan for their left tackle spot. It was just, we got to figure out something. Now they're telegraphing it. They're telling you exactly what they want to do. So stop giving me they're going to trade for Cam Robinson, or they're going to go and trade for X, Y, or Z player, or they're going to go sign David Bakhtiari, or I'm sure at some point they'll sign Donovan Smith. No, that is not what the Chiefs do. That is not what the Chiefs are going to do. Come on. We'll talk some more Chiefs to lead off the 3 o'clock hour. We are going to take a look at the Athletics list of playoff winners postseason winners and losers. The Chiefs are not included on the list, and I'm not necessarily sure that's the right line of thinking for this Chiefs team. We'll also get to Kevin Patra's list at NFL.com of the biggest roster holes remaining. Have some Big 12 football to get to at 3:30. Shehan Jeyarajah is going to join us. We'll get to our lingering questions from the offseason for all the Big 12 as well. Michael Swain will join us for Jayhawk Weekly at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour today, too. While we have a minute, though, before we are off the air here, Spencer, you're a country music fan.
Yes.
Kenny Chesney, yay or nay?
Yay, I'd love to go to that tour.
Kenny Chesney's coming to Kansas City in the near future.
Yeah, he is. 2 days after the 4th of July, to be exact. July 6th, GHA Field, Arrowhead Stadium.
And we are going to have a chance to win tickets on our show. Not today, but this week. Friday, in fact. We are going to have a chance to win Kenny Chesney tickets. It is a huge concert. I know we got some country music fans out there, people who just want to go and watch a fun show.
Look, you're getting really 2 for the price of 1 with this free ticket giveaway. Not only are you getting Kenny Chesney.
Who's opening for him?
Their main opener, Zach Brown Band.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a big act for an opener.
Yeah. And I believe Megan Maroney is opening for him or for them.
I remember a few years ago, he came to Green Bay and there were he played at Lambeau Field, tons of arrests. And the field was destroyed. They had to work overtime to get the field re-prepared for the start of the NFL season. Total mess.
The tailgating scene at Pittsburgh last year was crazy.
I can imagine so. And it will be at Arrowhead too. Yeah. So if you are interested in winning tickets to go see Kenny Chesney and company at Arrowhead Stadium, we'll have more information throughout the week. You can also go check out info about it on our website. That's 580wibw.com, along with all the other promotions we've got going on here at the Sports Voice of Kansas right now. We have to get to a break for the news here in just a moment. Don't forget, coming up in the 3 o'clock hour of the show, we'll go around the NFL. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports is going to join us. And, of course, we've got Random Question Tuesday. Alpha Media is proud to partner with the Kansas Drive to Zero Coalition and encourage you to join Kansas Fans with a Plan. Always have a designated driver or other sober ride to and from your destination. And that's true if you win those Kenny Chesney tickets as well. Top City Metal Supply text line is open for you. 785-272-9429 is that text line number. And of course, you can find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. We've added 50 subscribers since Dan left. I think we flipped the script now. I think we can officially say it's no longer because of me.
Well, Dan was out for an extended period of time. Also, apparently we're losing subscribers. What the world?
Unbelievable.
We're down to 591.
Unbelievable. Come on. Get back on it.
People are just trying to win tickets.
We're back on the air. We're back on YouTube after the news on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. now. 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. 3 o'clock hour coming your way live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Across from me is Spencer Dupuis. Across the glass is Trenton Craxter. Dan Lucero is off. He is on paternity leave today and throughout the rest of the week. Short week for us this week, in fact. We are off tomorrow. It is Juneteenth, which we are taking off for the holiday. So hope you also get the day off. I know a lot more companies are doing so. So I hope you get the day off tomorrow. We will be off tomorrow. And then the Royals play at 2:30 on Thursday. 2 o'clock pregame, 2:30 start time.
2:37 first pitch, I believe.
2:37. Yeah, you're right. So we will be on whenever post game ends until 6 o'clock, which might mean we're on for the better part of an hour. It might mean we're on for 15 minutes. We won't know until we get there, but that is just something to be aware of for Thursday this week. We'll have a full show on Friday coming your way, though, so don't worry. We'll have a full guest list that day, plenty to get to. Obviously, a ton to get to on this edition of the show as well. But if you open up YouTube, you turn on your radio tomorrow, and you say, where the hell is 580 Sports Talk? We will be having the day off tomorrow, and then we'll have Royals baseball coming up during the daytime on Thursday. In this
kind of interesting that Oakland didn't move the time of the game. I know at least a few teams have late afternoon games tomorrow, like 4:05 games
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why?
Holiday. It's a federal holiday.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Move tomorrow's game, you mean?
Yeah, like why it's 8:40? Why isn't it like 6:05 or they're 4:05? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm not sure. I do not have an explanation for it. I did not know that many teams were moving their games up, though. Are the Nats doing that?
Yeah, so the Nats play the Diamondbacks 3:05. Then the Braves host the Tigers at 11:20 Central. Pirates host the Reds at 12:35 Central. 11:40 for the Marlins game. 12:05 Central. Philly, like there's only like a few games that are at normal time tomorrow.
Huh. Interesting. I was totally unaware of that. But the Royals are going to play a regular all-night game tomorrow.
It's like half and half. Half the teams decided to do that. The other half didn't.
It's coming up in this hour of the show. We'll go around the NFL here in just a moment. We've also got Random Question Tuesday, and we will hear from Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, national college football writer, will join us to talk all things Big 12 football. That is coming up here in just a little bit. Plus your texts to the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429. And you can also find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. Have a comment here from John on YouTube. I sometimes wonder if you guys should have Jake LeBon back on as a guest host for the What Is Wrong With You finals. I miss his unsolicited emotional outbursts over trivial things. Very, very much so. I feel like he and I both would do that. I feel like the things I would get, I think we just kind of did it about different things, to be honest with you. Yeah, we'll need to find a way to, whatever we do to make this year's finals for What Is Wrong With You unique. We change the rules every single year. We'll have to do something fun.
When do you usually hold those?
The final week of the year, right up to, because this year, for example, the final day of the year is the 31st. And we work on the 31st. We work New Year's Eve. So the 30th and 31st, we'll probably do a 2-day tournament, I would assume. So we'll pick our December winner that previous week, the week of Christmas, which is on a Wednesday this year. And then we will, on the 30th, narrow it down to probably 6 contenders or so, and then pick from the final 6 on Tuesday, final day of the year. That's normally how we do it anyway. But we've also done it. We've done it where we did the entire tournament in one day, and at 2:20, 3:20, 4:20, 5:20, we just narrowed it down each time. We did it once where we did an entire week where we did it and narrowed it down that way. We've done so many different ones. We never write them down. We never write down the rules of how we do the tournament. Somewhere, it might have been thrown out. Somewhere we've got a list of all the winners dating back to 2017, but we never decided to actually keep the rules. So we just change it on the fly every single year. But it's worked so far. It fits the I mean, it fits the brand of the program, I think of the segment.
I think I might miss my first What Is Wrong With You yearly finals.
You gone on the 31st?
I think I'm taking my vacation that time.
Christmas time.
Yeah, getting back east.
Best time to do it.
Yeah.
And around the
and
holidays.
I get an extra day that month because it's my birthday month.
When's your birthday?
The 12th.
September 12th.
So
Or
I get
December
extra,
12th. So you break the trend then, because Dan and I both have September birthdays.
Yeah, well, corporate gives us an extra day off during our birthday month. So
you're going to take it off.
I think I'm going to parlay that
into extra long Christmas break.
Into an extra long Christmas break.
Let's get to the NFL, and I wanted to mention this from earlier today. So The Athletic posted their list of Mike Jones, of The Athletic specifically. Who is Mike Jones? He has his list of the offseason winners and losers. And I'm going to start with this. He does not have the Chiefs considered anywhere on this list. Better to not be a loser. Maybe not aggressively because they're already at the top of the mountain. They are the gold standard in the NFL. They've got the best head coach. They've got the best quarterback. They've got the best front office, all of that. They're coming off of back-to-back Super Bowls. I'd call this Chiefs offseason a win. They know what their offensive line is. They don't know who is going to play left tackle, but it's one of two guys. They kept Chris Jones for the long haul. They drafted for need and filled a lot of pieces, and Xavier Worthy specifically looks like he's going to be a real dude for this team. They got depth pieces via the draft. They added functional pieces in left tackle included in the draft. They added functional pieces in free agency as well, most notably including Hollywood Brown. They locked down Drew Tranquill, who's going to start for this team for the next couple of years at linebacker. I would consider that a winning offseason for the Chiefs. Again, not as flashy as, number one on this list is the Bears in terms of winners. They got a franchise quarterback and a number one wide receiver. Well, number two wide receiver behind DJ Moore. But I would say this is for sure a winning offseason for the Chiefs. I would include them in that list.
Yeah.
If you were to say this for every single team in the NFL, I would definitely put the Chiefs on the winning side of things. What losses did they have this offseason? Trading L'Jarius Sneed? Is that it?
The potential loss of Rasheed Rice. We still don't have anything.
I suppose, yeah. I guess I was mostly thinking in terms of like what the front office has done, not self-inflicted. But no, you're right. I mean, if you end up losing Rasheed Rice for 6 games, obviously
that's a loss.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Other than that, though, I mean, you traded Sneed, who you weren't going to pay anyway. You lost Willie Gay to a 1-year deal with the Saints. Like I think it's been a great offseason for the Chiefs, all things considered. So the winners that The Athletic and Mike Jones put together. He's got the Bears on this list. I mean, yeah, they've stunk for years now. They re-signed their number one cornerback. They acquired Keenan Allen. They drafted Rome Odunze. They drafted Caleb Williams. Yeah, it's a win. I don't know how you could consider it anything else but a win. And now a lot of people, we saw, who was it yesterday who said that the Bears have a fantastic roster? PFF.
Yeah.
That was from a Pro Football Focus piece. That's wrong. That is objectively incorrect, but they got much better, and they added what they think is a franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams. Your Commanders are on here. New general manager, new head coach, new culture, new quarterback. The positive offseason tally marks abound for Washington. Not only did Peters and Quinn identify key vets to help instill a new mindset, they also found pieces that will lead to improved effectiveness in key areas. Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, drafting Jaden Daniels, adding every single rotational defensive lineman that the Cowboys had that weren't nailed down. They all ended up in Washington, it felt like. I think for sure I would consider that a winning offseason. I know you would.
Yeah.
The Detroit...
I think this
Go ahead.
Jones at one point wrote for the Washington Post.
The Detroit Lions are on here. I don't know, man. The Lions improved at positions where they already were good. And they added cornerback depth, which is important. Carlton Davis is a nice player. I was discounting him when we talked about the Lions a couple weeks ago. Carlton Davis is a nice player. They locked up Amon-Ra St. Brown, as well as Penei Sewell and Jared Goff. Guys that they already had. They added Kevin Zeitler to their offensive line, an already elite offensive line. DJ Reader is a nice piece. Their big edge rusher acquisition was Marcus Davenport, who's been bad. He's a bust. He's a jag. That's all he is. And they're going to rely a whole lot on a couple of rookies in their secondary in Terry and Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw. Could they be good? Could they improve? Certainly. Yeah. But I'm not as high on them as I know a lot of people are.
I can't see this piece because I am not currently at the moment subscribed to The Athletic. Do they talk about the coaching staff, keeping them together at all?
Amazingly, no. That's funny because that might be the biggest reason why it was a great offseason, because they kept Ben Johnson.
Yeah, and their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, that's surprising. Good offseason. I don't know about great for them.
No, I would say that the reason they would be on this list would be that they kept their coordinators after a successful year. Being poached.
I think it is fair to say that they did not get worse.
No, not at all.
I'm not sure that they got that much better, though, I think is the question. The Eagles are on here, highlighting their draft with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. They go sign Saquon, brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, traded for Bryce Huff, acquired Devin White as well. Devin White's bad. Devin White's not a good NFL player. I don't know that that's a real play. Like, C.J. Gardner-Johnson's fine. He's a vibes guy more than he's a playmaker guy. Bryce Huff has never played more than 400 snaps in a season. I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's a lot of fun. They also spent a boatload of money on him.
Yeah.
Is that the smartest way to handle your offseason? I liked their draft. They extended A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's important, but I don't know. I think it's like the Lions. I don't think it was a bad offseason. I don't think they got worse. Well, I take it back. I do think they got worse. I think Bryce Huff is a worse player than Hassan Reddick. I think they did take a step back there. I would not right now put the Eagles in Super Bowl contender territory.
I wouldn't either.
I don't think I would put them in that territory. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers also listed as his last winner of the offseason. I don't know. That's the same thing. It's one of those teams that I think they are the same. I don't think they got a whole lot better in the grand scheme of things. I love Baker Mayfield. I love Mike Evans. Levante David, one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Antoine Winfield's one of the best safeties in the NFL. They drafted a starting center in Graham Barton. What else did they do? How are they better?
Starting center because they're like 2 years ago, their center retired, or a year ago, right?
Yeah, Ryan Jensen after he had a freak injury. Yeah,
they had to.
And I love Graham Barton. Like, I like these dudes. They're the same team, which was probably the weakest division winner last year. Now, they won a playoff game because the Eagles were in shambles at the end of the year. But I don't know. I feel like for me to say a team had a winning offseason, generally speaking, you need to say that they got better. I think the Chiefs got better. I think they are a better team. I think crazy because they won a Super Bowl. But considering the pieces they added and what they were able to do to mitigate the losses they had, like L'Jarius Sneed, like a Willie Gay, for example.
Not only that, you take action on, even though you were the Super Bowl winner, you did the things you needed to do to get there. You did everything. You took steps to get back to improve at the position that you lacked at the whole season last year.
Agreed.
You signed a receiver that is, if he can play how people think he can play, he's going to get a huge contract next summer or next spring from some other team. And you drafted the fastest receiver in the draft.
I agree.
That's a win.
I would have rather put the Chiefs on here than the Buccaneers or the Lions, and probably more so than the Eagles too.
Yeah.
I would have certainly put them on there. The losers, the Buffalo Bills.
Makes sense. They would cut a bunch of their team to get under the cap.
Yeah, I do think that people are putting a little too much weight on, like, they lost a lot of good players. Like Trey White, good player, but he's been hurt a lot. Mitch Morse, good player. Jordan Poyer, good player. They had to get under the cap. They knew they weren't going to pay a bunch of these dudes. Like, they lost Gabe Davis. You don't need to mention Gabe Davis was not good last year. Like, that's the thing. The name brands and actual contributors, not the same thing. So I'm not sure how much they lost.
Diggs too.
Yes, losing Stephon Diggs, legitimately not good. That's a tough spot to be in. I think they definitely have had to rebuild their offseason. This is a rebuilding year, or a retooling year, if you will, for Buffalo. There's no doubt about that. The Panthers are on here. I don't know. Did they get that much worse? Like, I kind of will put them in the middle. They improved at head coach with hiring Dave Canales. That's positive. They did lose a bunch of dudes. Brian Burns, Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin, Bradley Bozeman. He retired. I believe he retired. Maybe he's still alive. I thought he had retired. Hayden Hurst also. Hayden Hurst is a Jag, though. Like, those are just names. They did go add Jadeveon Clowney. They spent way too much money on their offensive guards, but they did improve there. I don't know that I would put them on this list. The Cowboys, yeah. Yeah, they're a lot worse.
They should be the top name.
They should be. Yes, absolutely agree. They've hit the worst offseason of any team in the league. The Jaguars, I don't know. Like losing Calvin Ridley and replacing him with Gabe Davis is a net loss. Like that, you're worse for doing that. They added Eric Armstead. They improved their offensive line with Mitch Morse, who, if you're going to say the Bills had a big loss losing Mitch Morse, and then you're just going to say, yeah, well, he's whatever on the Jaguars, that doesn't click. Like, Mitch Morse is a good player. I don't think the Jags I don't think they got worse. And then finally, the 49ers. You think? I don't know. Did they get worse? Again, who's gone? Quarterback's still there. Lock down their running back long term. They eventually are going to lose some combination of Ayuk and Debo. They drafted a wide receiver, and they extended Juwan Jennings.
You lost Armstead.
Yeah,
Who else did you lose? I can't even think about it.
Javon Kinlaw. Like, dude, you're putting Javon Kinlaw on here.
What?
I thought Javon Kinlaw was going to be a stud. I watched him at South Carolina and thought this dude's going to be a baller. You know what? He is not a baller. He's just he's a nobody. What is this? I disagree with a lot of this list. I would put the Chiefs on here as a winner. I really would. And I think I might have put the Broncos as a loser on here. I would have put Denver. Well, again, a team that was already bad and getting worse. What did they do to get better? Nothing. They spent the 12th overall pick on Bo Nix. They probably could have gotten in the second round. Yeah, not a good offseason for them. Much better offseason, obviously, for the Super Bowl champions. After this upcoming commercial break, we've got Random Question Tuesday. We are also going to hear from Shehan Jeyarajah this hour, college football writer for CBS Sports. That's all coming up in this 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. got a comment here from Paul in the 580 Sports Talk YouTube comment section regarding the Kansas City offseason, whether it's a win or a loss. Most fans, myself included, probably consider moving on from MVS a win.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Look, Xavier Worthy's never played an NFL snap, right? We don't know how good he is going to be in the NFL.
Is the hamstring something to worry about?
Is the hamstring something to worry about? Sure. The potential for Xavier Worthy is better than that of MVS by a lot. Like, a lot. And that alone makes that an exchange positive for the Chiefs.
I feel like the potential that you have on this roster of Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney would be the same.
The fact that you are continuing to push those guys down the depth chart with the moves you've made this offseason, I think is very clearly a net positive overall for this Chiefs team. All right, Random Question Tuesday time before we get to Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. Spencer, you're up first. What's your random question for us?
What sports moment that you were there for do you want to relive? That could include a game, a parade. You saw a player somewhere. Yeah.
That's a really good one. I would say for me, man, there's a few that I could probably point to. Oh, man. The one I would go with would be, and this is tough, I'm going to go with the 2022 Elite Eight at the United Center in Chicago, KU versus Miami.
You were there?
I was there for that one. I was covering it for work. It was awesome. I just drove up, took the truck, drove up, stayed with my folks, went in downtown to the UC every day to cover it and work. And that's one of the coolest work-related trips I've ever gotten to make. And the Elite Eight, KU was not playing well in the first half, struggled. Very end of the half, freshman KJ Adams and seventh-year senior Jalen Coleman-Lands get subbed in. KJ makes a big defensive play right at the end of the half. You felt like, okay, that's the one positive thing that happened this whole half. And one of my good friends who I went to high school with and went to KU with was at the game. And I ran down to the concourse and I caught up with him and some of his friends for a little bit during halftime. We talked and he said, give me hope. Like, give me hope that this is going to be fixed. And I said, Bill Self talks about how tough this team is all the time. This is the moment where they need to be tough. I trust that they're going to live up to that again. And they did. And David McCormick kicked ass in the second half. Ochai was great in the second half of that game. Jalen Wilson was huge. CB came up with big plays. That one, I was sitting upstairs. I'm clearly not big time enough to get a down low media row on the court seat at events like that. So I was upstairs in the press box in a suite at the UC for that. And I was alone. Like, I had some local TV folks who were next to me, and they had gone down to shoot the game. So I was all alone in this room. And I was, like, losing my mind. It was like having an out-of-body experience. Like, no one's here to experience this with me. The comeback is happening. Guys, be here to watch this with me. But I'd probably relive that, especially knowing what it eventually led to. Trenton, do you have one?
A question or an answer?
An answer.
Yeah. KU Oklahoma football this year. I think that was one of the greatest things I've ever lived to, because you wake up at like 4 a.m. for Fox noon kickoff, and you're down there with your sign. We had a pretty good spot to it. They gave you free Wendy's breakfast.
That's nice.
Just KU's a Wendy's school. And you sit through all that. And then I had to run up to the Union real quick because I had to help some of the guys on the board that hadn't done it before. Brendan, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Right up there on the third floor. So I ran down real quick, got back down. I think I was about the 7th row from the field still. The atmosphere was just really cool. It was really packed. And then, like, it goes into a lightning delay. Everyone disperses. And there's, like, me and maybe 20 other people that stuck around in the student section. And we were just having the time of our lives. Like, the bonds that we formed were so cool. I think there was a lot of confusion. I think that's why a lot of people didn't come back, is because there wasn't really an announcement. We never knew when the game was going to be on. It just kept saying on the big stream, we are in a lightning delay. We will have an update in 30 minutes. Eventually, teams came back out, and we also got to yell at the Oklahoma staffers and all the people that kept coming out onto the sideline during that break. But and then, yeah, KU it didn't look like KU was going to win. Jason Bean threw a late interception. It was like, well, here
Too
we go.
late interception.
Yeah, I was like, well, here we go. On a screen pass, he threw an interception to defensive end. It was like, well, it's over. And 10 minutes later, you're storming the field. So I think that, and then throwing the goalpost to Potter Lake.
Unbeatable experience. I hope every KU student gets to do that at some point.
Mine real quick. The first quarter of the Marshall Louisville game from 2016, watching Marshall sack Lamar Jackson on the first drive of the game in the end zone where all the students are. Like, it's 20 yards out and they're sacked him. That part of the game, that was about it because they got obliterated. And then the 2018 Stanley Cup Championship Parade.
Yeah.
The just the moments that Ovechkin and Oshie had on the stage afterwards.
That's
after
cool.
the actual parade procession, just that, reliving that part, how crazy and how wild everybody was.
We have a comment here from Vance on YouTube. He says, from what I have heard, it's tough to watch any game with BD. I think that's by his own admission, if I remember right. Yeah, I'm not an especially pleasant person to watch a game with, not because I'm the sort of person who like picks up stuff and throws it against the wall in rage. I know people like that. That is not who I am. I am the type, though, who I just am miserable. Like, during a basketball game, it's a little bit different because it's so fast paced and you feel like you're part of a run as it's happening. And that's what it felt like in the second half of that Elite Eight game. But like watching a Packers game, it's not fun. Like, I look forward to it, but it's not an enjoyable experience. I'm just miserable for a full 3 hours, hoping for the best, expecting the worst. And every time my hopes get up, I unconsciously drop them back down and I'm miserable. And then it's over and I think, oh, that was nice. Cool, we won. And then I'm going to watch highlights all week long and then get nervous and sick to my stomach again next week over and over and over until I die. That's pretty much how it's going to be. That's Random Question Tuesday. Coming up next, we'll move on to some Big 12 talk. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports College Football is going to join us to talk all things KU, K-State, and Big 12 football. That's coming up here on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. Back on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. Brendan Dworzynski, Spencer Dupuis, and our summer intern, Trenton Kraxner, here with you today. We are closer and closer every day, every minute to the start of fall camp and the college football season. So what better time to break up some of the offseason monotony than to bring in our good friend Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports and their college football coverage. Shehan, thank you so much for joining us. The one question off the field I've got to ask you to lead things off, because I know our co-host Dan, who is on paternity leave right now, I know he is super fired up about College Football 25 coming out next month. How fired up are you for finally the return of a college football video game?
Well, I'll tell you what. So funny story with me, right? So I didn't grow up much in college football, and I really only got into it when I got to college, which was right when the game stopped. So I've probably played the old version of the game only a couple of times. And so now I'm trying to make up for lost time. I actually bought an Xbox for the first time in like 15 years just to prepare for it. I can't wait to kind of go and pick an underdog team to go and try to win with. So I'm really excited for it. I've got my eyes set right on July 19th.
I will tell you this, as a KU grad, I'm excited for KU to be in the game and actually be good again for the first time since I was 12, 13 years old. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Speaking of the Big 12, though, and we'll get to KU, K-State, and some of the on-the-field stuff in a moment, I have to ask you about the big news or the big reports from last week that the Big 12 is pretty much for sale, and every part of the Big 12 is for sale, from the actual name of the conference to maybe even a share of the league itself to private equity. What was sort of your big picture major takeaway from all that news that broke last week about the Big 12 truly being open for business, as Brett Yormark likes to say?
Well, so I was at the Big 12 spring meetings here in Dallas a couple of weeks back, and one of the biggest takeaways from it was Brett Yormark said, look, we believe that the conference needs to play a more central role in increasing revenue. They talked about certainly stuff that programs could do on campus, things like, of course, putting logos on the field with sponsorships and things like that. But he was pretty adamant that he feels like the conference can also do more to try to increase that number. And it's no secret, the Big 12 is signing a television contract that will average about $34 million per year from ESPN. And all in, that's going to push them close to $50 million a year in total payout. But they clearly believe that they need to do more to try to catch up with the SEC and the Big Ten, who could be pushing towards 80, 90, 100 million potentially. So I think that, when you talk about things like selling naming rights for the conference, when you talk about things like, private equity, which is certainly something that I wouldn't necessarily be as thrilled about, I think that the Big 12 kind of views it as, look, the existential threat for us is getting left behind financially. We can deal with some of the branding questions. We can deal with some of, the jokes that people will make at the beginning if we're able to compete on the field financially. Now, again, one of the reasons that Brett Yormark has been pretty well regarded in his limited time as a commissioner is because he is willing to try things. He's willing to have big ideas. And actually, I think that even one thing to even point out is that in a great compliment to Brett Yormark, the AAC decided to hire another person from the outside entertainment business world, sort of in the mold of Brett Yormark as well. So I think in a lot of ways, especially outside of those big two conferences, this is what everybody else is going to try to be doing. So it's going to feel strange at first, but I'm curious to see if it works.
Shehan Jeyarajah is our guest. He covers college football for CBS Sports, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk via the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. You can find Shehan on Twitter as well, at Shehan Jeyarajah. So with all of that in mind then, and knowing that the Big 12's number one goal here is wanting to stay in a financially viable place alongside the real power two, the Big 10 and the SEC, does that make you feel at all like the Big 12 in a way is already kind of negotiating and working from a place of, not a position of strength? I'm not sure what word to use. And what I mean by that is, if you're saying, well, we have to make maybe these huge major landscape shifting decisions, well, those other conferences are going to say, well, if you're giving $1 billion to the Big 12, we should get $1.5 billion. We should get $2 billion. To me, Shehan, it feels like something that is, and I don't mean to use the slippery slope fallacy here, but it just feels like something that this is only the first domino, and those other conferences are eventually going to do the same, and maybe even to a bigger degree.
I think that the way that the Big 12 would look at it is that there are going to be instances where they are willing to do things that the other two conferences aren't willing to do, right? Like I think that when you talk about naming rights, that could be an influx of cash of $3 to $4 million per school per year, which doesn't sound like much on the surface, but that is a lot of money when you talk about trying to make up to that $22 million payout threshold, when you talk about trying to not cut sports. And I don't think, for example, like the SEC is never going to do something like that, just in general. The Big Ten is very unlikely to do something like that. I think the Big 12, from a naming perspective, I mean, certainly there's this tie back to the Big 8, but I don't think that people really remember it the same way that the Big 12 was born out of the Big 8. And I don't think that when you think about the words Big or 12, that there is as much implicit brand value as potentially with the SEC and the Big 10. So I think that that's one piece of it, is that the Big 12 is just going to be willing to do things that other conferences aren't. And I think the other piece to think about is that the Big 12 kind of readily acknowledges we are not the Big 2. We got during college football playoff negotiations this sort of sign that, hey, look, the Big 10 and the SEC are going to get this huge percentage of the revenue, and the ACC gets a smaller percentage, and the Big 12 gets an even smaller percentage than that. So it's kind of enumerated now that there's stratification between the different leagues. And even with Brett Yormark, he never tries to make the case that we are the number one football league. He says we are aiming for number 3 and we're trying to move up. That's what he says whenever he's asked about their place in the pecking order. And I think that that's another thing to keep an eye on, is that it's not just necessarily trying to overtake or catch up to the SEC. It's also trying to outrace the ACC and be the conference that maybe can just be that alternative to the Big 2 conferences. And maybe if Florida State and Clemson decide to leave the conference, if North Carolina decides to leave the conference, if Oregon and Washington, if they end up in a different position, maybe the Big 12 is a more attractive conference long-term, even as the third conference, than they would be using any other way.
I have to say, you're spot on with the thing about the Big 8 and the Big 12 branding, because as much as I like to consider myself a college football traditionalist, I was just shy of my second birthday when the Big 8 became the Big 12, so I don't know if I have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to that. Well, let's get to some of the on-the-field stuff here, Shehan, and I want to start with our local teams here to Topeka with KU and K-State. The number one big one for Kansas State, they've got on their roster the Big 12 player with the shortest odds to win the Heisman Trophy this year, and that's a guy with exactly one career start in Avery Johnson. We're excited about Avery. I think he's going to be a really good college football player, but do you think K-State should be as comfortable as they seem to be handing him the full reins of the program with just one start under his belt?
About handing him the reins of the program, yes, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the best recruits to ever sign with Kansas State. We saw athletically the upside that he has. He had that 5-touchdown game against Texas Tech last year. And even if you talk about going into the Pop-Tarts Bowl, the performance that he had. So this player is a star, no doubt about it. I think the question becomes, is it going to be immediately in year one in 2024? Is he going to, like when you talk about, a player having some of the best odds to win the Heisman Trophy from the Big 12, that's a lot of pressure to put on Avery Johnson, especially, by the way, considering there are other key losses on offense that Kansas State withstood. Of course, on the offensive line with Cooper Beebe, among others. Ben Sinnott, who was one of the most underrated tight ends in the country to me, apparently wasn't all that underrated once he got to the NFL. He was a top NFL draft pick. And so, I mean, I think that there are questions about Kansas State when you talk about receivers, when you talk about offensive line, that aren't going to be about Avery Johnson. So, look, there's going to be growing pains. I don't expect that this is going to be a team that just blows through the conference like they have at times over the past 2 years. But when you talk about the long game, when you talk about what's capable with Avery Johnson in the lineup, again, he's a star in the making.
I love their backfield. DJ Giddens is a great local story for us. Junction City, Kansas. We got to see DJ play in high school, and he was a good high school player. I never thought he'd be one of the best running backs in the Big 12. Avery Johnson obviously has all this potential, but what do you think Dylan Edwards can do to take this offense to a next level?
The thing I love about Dylan Edwards coming in is that you have 3 guys who can run the ball, and they all kind of do it in different ways. And what Dylan Edwards brings more than anything else is just that pure speed element. I actually was down at the Colorado TCU game last year when Dylan Edwards made his debut as a college football player. And even against a team in TCU that's very fast, I mean, that's kind of what they're known for, Dylan Edwards popped off the page. And he was able to do it both carrying the ball, but he was also able to do it as a receiver in a lot of ways as well. So this is a situation where I think all three of these guys have the chance to be on the field at the same time quite a bit. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you got to run some I formation stuff to make it happen. I think that they're going to have a lot of creative ways and opportunities to get these guys on the field. I'd love to see Dylan Edwards flex into the slot a little bit to maybe play off of Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens. So I absolutely love the fit, and I love the fact that they give you three different looks.
We're chatting with Shehan Jeyarajah. A few more questions for the CBS Sports college football writer. Joining us here on 580 Sports Talk via the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. As for the team, not 45 minutes to the west of where I sit today, but 30 minutes to the east, the Kansas Jayhawks. Lots of talent on offense, and I mean a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. Now, they got to stay healthy, specifically with Jalen Daniels at quarterback, but do you think this KU team, all-encompassing, do you think they actually have what it takes to compete in the top, let's say, 4 or so of the Big 12 this year?
Absolutely. Now, the thing you have to say is that last year and the year before that, there was the backup plan to Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean. And Jason Bean, when you look at his stats, rated as one of the better quarterbacks in the country playing in that system. I don't think they have that player this year. They have some players they're excited about. Cole Ballard, of course, had a good performance in his lone start last year. Isaiah Marshall is a player who, as a freshman, might actually get thrust into action if Jalen Daniels misses a lot of time. But if Jalen Daniels is in the lineup, this is one of the best teams in the Big 12. They're really kind of stacked almost at every level of the field. Of course, quarterback, running back, you've got Devin Neal back there, who's one of the best in the conference. Their experience at wide receiver is just absolutely silly with multiple COVID seniors on the roster. Defensively, they managed to hold on to Kobe Bryant. They managed to bring back some other key pieces as well. So, this is a team that is ready for their moment. The fact that they missed Jalen Daniels, the preseason Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, for basically the entire Big 12 season last year and still finished with 9 wins, was one of the most impressive performances in the country to me last year. And now, if Daniels is finally able to be healthy, I think that they have the chance to be even better than that. Now, again, it's a lot to put on one player, and back injuries, it's very rare to see them just disappear. But if he can play, let's say, 2/3 of the games in Big 12 play, this is an upper echelon team.
I know that this conference has so many good running backs. We talked about that K-State group. Ollie Gordon is awesome. Taj Brooks is awesome. I know there are plenty of others. I get that. But, man, I will sing Devin Neal's praises from the highest mountain to anyone who will listen. He is such a stud, Shehan.
No, he's fantastic. And just the physical profile that he has, the way that he's able to work through contact. I mean, I think that Kansas has also done such a good job of managing him. And the piece that you love about it, too, is that I think that they've done a great job of working in guys like Daniel Highshaw and, of course, running the ball with Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean just to kind of put him in the best position to succeed. But when it's time to make stuff happen, I mean, Devin Neal has been that guy. He gets you tough first downs. He has breakaway speed. I mean, he is a complete running back. And, it's actually fascinating because the past couple of years we've talked so much about running backs losing positional value in the NFL. And one thing I've been keeping an eye on is you see some more of these running backs decide to come back to college where, one, you can probably get a little bit of a contract from an NIL perspective, but two, you have an opportunity to really carry a team in a lot of ways. And you mentioned Devin Neal, of course, and RJ Harvey, another one at UCF. There's so many good running backs in the Big 12 this year. Actually, 3 of the top 4 returning rushers in college football play in the Big 12 conference. And by the way, also the number 6 running back, Penny Boone, is transferring to UCF as well. So it's going to be a fantastic year, and I think that Devin Neal is going to be right up there with any of them.
Outside of the Kansas teams, just a couple other quick ones from around the Big 12. Number one, I have asked this question to everyone that will listen to me over the last few weeks, Shehan. What am I missing with Oklahoma State? They've got, and I've got my issues with Mike Gundy, but he's obviously a Hall of Fame caliber coach who wins, especially when you don't expect him to. They've got a quarterback who I'm pretty sure is about to qualify for AARP. They've got Ollie Gordon. They've had a good defense for years. And yet there are some sports books. There's one here in Kansas that gives them just the 9th best odds to win the league. What am I missing with the public perception of Oklahoma State?
Well, I think that when you look at Oklahoma State, it's very unlikely that they're going to replicate what they did last season in terms of their close game success. But what I think people are missing is that I don't think they need to. They rank among the national leaders in returning production. Of course, like you mentioned, Ollie Gordon in the lineup when he's played. they have been just a completely different team. They had that struggle to start the 2023 season, but after that, they ran through and only lost one game in the second half of their Big 12 schedule. So I think that this is a very undervalued team. I think that people view them as only what they were last season without the potential to grow. And defensively, I mean, their stats were really bad, but I saw signs of life from that unit, and I saw them start to figure things out. So I expect a pretty improved defensive unit, especially with what they have coming back, especially with their edge rusher, Colin Oliver, moving back into a pure pass rushing role. And then offensively, you mentioned it, one of the best running backs in the country, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the country, Brennan Presley, Alan Bowman. I think that the other piece of this too is people are like, well, is Alan Bowman the guy who can get you there? And to me, that's just a lazy question. I don't think he needs to be the guy who gets them there. I think he just needs to keep the trains running on time. So I like Oklahoma State a lot. I still have them probably behind Utah and maybe maybe one or two other teams as well. But there are, to me, 5 true contenders in the Big 12 entering the season, and Oklahoma State is clearly among them.
All right, Shehan, last thing I've got for you. And again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us. Give me one team in the new 16-team Big 12. Give me one team who you think will surprise us in a positive way and one team that might surprise us this year in not such a positive way.
Well, I think that it's funny. Iowa State is right on that line of having some expectations, but I don't think that they're being valued enough. They went 6-3 in conference play last year, had a legitimate chance after starting 1-2 to go to the Big 12 championship game. And they actually are the national leader in returning production. Rocco Beck, I think one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the conference, two really good wide receivers, a promising young running back, and what will be the best returning defense in the Big 12 with Texas off to the SEC. So they're a team who I think could absolutely jump out and have a chance to have a really special year. On the downside, that's a good question. So I still am very high on this team, but I'm a little more concerned than most about Arizona. I think that defensively, especially in their front, they lost more than people realize. The things that they do well are obvious. I mean, they have probably the best overall passing game in the Big 12. They've got a great secondary, especially now that Takario Davis decided to come back at cornerback. But I just think that they're a little softer in the front seven after losing multiple transfers, including a couple to Texas along the defensive line. And so I think that this is a team that will be closer to the middle of the pack and not necessarily one that will immediately just replicate their 10-win season.
To check out all of Shehan Jeyarajah's work, you can find him on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah. And, of course, head over to CBSSports.com. He covers college football for CBS Sports. And, Shehan, as always, man, thank you so much for taking some time for us today. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you a little bit later on, hopefully, as we get even more pumped up for the start of the college football season.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is Shehan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports, national college football writer. Awesome, awesome stuff. And, again, you can find him on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of the show, we'll get to our lingering questions from the Big 12 offseason and those from KU and K-State. Michael Swain will join us for Jayhawk Weekly. And, of course, we've got What Is Wrong With You. Your texts are welcome to the Top City Metal Supply text line. Your comments are welcome on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube. And we're back after the news right here on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. We are halfway home on this June 18th. I am Brendan Dworzinski. Right there across the table for me, that is Spencer Dupuis. On the other side of the glass, Trenton Kraxner, our summer intern. And the open chair in studio belongs to Dan Lucero. He is out. He is on paternity leave this week. He will be, though, I can confirm. Sources have indicated to me Dan will be back next week.
This just in. Dan Lucero will return to the mic next Monday at 2:06 p.m.
This just in. Yes, we will see Dan here in the near future. I'm certain he will be very tired, which is understandable.
Yeah. I mean, you already told him that we don't need to see him till closer to showtime. So
yeah,
we might not see him until 1:30, 1:45 next Monday.
Or alternately, you might see him at your desk. Spencer and Dan have desks right next to each other. You might just turn around and see Dan sleeping at his desk. There were times after, especially after Jake had his first child, his son, where I remember this vivid, clear memory. I came to work one day and I had someone to talk to him about. And I walked up to the office and I thought, why is this door usually it's either all the way closed or it's wide open. So I pushed it open and I was like, hey, and I saw him sleeping on his floor. I don't know a whole lot about small children and babies, but I do know you get very tired when you have them. So we might see Dan, hopefully not sleeping during the show, but otherwise getting a little extra rest in. But we'll see Dan again coming up next week. He'll join us here live in the Kansas Drive to Zero studio, where in this 4 o'clock hour of the show, we will get to our lingering off-season Big 12 questions, a couple of which we brought up with Shehan Jeyarajah. And a big thanks to Shehan for joining us last hour as well. Absolutely fantastic stuff, as always, from the CBS Sports National College Football writer. We'll also hear from Michael Swain this hour. We've got Jayhawk Weekly, as we do every Tuesday afternoon at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. And What Is Wrong With You is coming up as well. Your texts are welcome to the Top City Metal Supply text line. That's 785-272-9429. From construction sites to renovations, from the farm to the garage, Top City Metal Supply understands the value of precision and cost efficiency. No more wasted materials, no more wasted money, just metal cut to the exact size you need. Top City Metal Supply is located on South Topeka Boulevard here in the capital city, just north of Forbes Field. You can also go find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of our YouTube channel. A lot of you subscribed yesterday or last week as part of our giveaway of those Diamond Club tickets yesterday. Congrats to Tyler, who picked up the win there. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube yet, though, just go to youtube.com, search 580 Sports Talk, and that is where you can find us every day. By the way, some news from earlier today, from right here in town, in fact. The House of Representatives for the state of Kansas passed the Star Bond proposal for potentially new Chiefs and Royals stadium inside the Sunflower State. 84-38, an overwhelming win, in fact, for the House bill. The bill now heads to the Senate to be voted on. Indications yesterday were that there's not enough opposition for Governor Kelly to veto the bill. Yeah. Don't know if that is indeed what the case would be. We still have to wait for the Senate, but significant.
A lot of bipartisan friendship here in this bill.
Here's what this is going to come down to in the end. Who is going to give us the better deal? That's the question that Clark and the Hunt family are going to ask themselves. Oh, yeah. Who is giving us the best deal? Is it the state of Missouri? Is it the state of Kansas? And if the answer is it's the state of Kansas, then guess what? Get ready to learn Star Bonds, buddy, because they are coming, and they're going to pay for a new Royals and or Chiefs stadium. Again, I still think I would put it at less than 50% chance either one happens. I think Royals is more likely than Chiefs. That's my official stance on the matter.
I don't know where I am, but I sure as heck love what the Royals currently have projected in their downtown ballpark. I love downtown ballparks.
They're awesome. I do not disagree. Your favorite team has one. My favorite team has one. Dan's favorite team has one. Trenton's does not, and that is the issue here. I don't know. The proposal was just so poorly thrown together.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the renderings were cool. It was neat. And, yeah, the fact that you're right there by the T-Mobile Center and Power and Light and everything, you're not far from Westport and all this stuff. I mean, it's awesome in principle. It's just they rejected the intelligence of their constituents. They just threw it together sloppily, and the Chiefs' plan was even worse. Like, oh, wow, parking. Wow, an entertainment deck.
Concert stage for Tech 9 to play his free concert pregame.
Every home Sunday, Tech 9. 30 minutes of Red Kingdom nonstop.
In lot whatever.
Like, come on, guys. You got to give me something a little better than that.
Give me some hotels. Give me some restaurants. Give me a Chiefs Hall of Fame.
I think they will, in the end. If someone's going to move, I think it would be the Royals to the Legends. And then I think the Chiefs will get a sweetheart deal from the state of Missouri to just own the entire Truman Sports Complex.
Look, Missouri is not leaving this thing without one team in Kansas City, Missouri.
No, I agree with that. I do not think
they're not going 0 for 2.
I agree. I am with you 100% on that. They will end this with at least one team, if not multiple teams.
Yeah.
At least. Maybe they do end up with both. It'd be cool if Kansas got one, but again, I don't necessarily need to get into the tax district stuff right now because it's not especially pertinent at the moment. Let's get to a little Big 12 football, shall we? We did last week our lingering off-season questions for the Chiefs, for the rest of the NFL, specifically the Chiefs' biggest threats in the AFC. What about for Big 12 football? What about for KU? What about for K-State? What about for the rest of the Big 12? So I've got a couple here for each team. We'll run through these quickly. Number one, both KU and K-State have new offensive coordinators this year. Colin Klein, he obviously, infamously went to Texas A&M, probably got an ungodly bag. I never saw what the contract was, but wanted to break away, do something new. Andy Kotelnicki from KU, surprising to everybody, including his longtime friend Lance Leipold, ended up at Penn State, where he will now be calling the plays. So, in their place, K-State promotes Connor Riley to co-OC and hires Matt Wells as offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, KU gave a co-offensive coordinator promotion to Jim Zabrowski, KU's quarterbacks coach, and then also hired Jeff Grimes from Baylor to be the new play caller and OC in Lawrence. Do you have any sort of worries about this new structure? Because it's essentially the same thing for both. There are obviously little intricacies that are different. Similar structure for both programs. Do you have any concerns about either one kind of splitting the baby with the offensive coordinator thing, keeping someone from in-house who gets promoted and has more control of the offense, plus someone who's new from the outside, one who will work with Jalen Daniels, one who will work with Avery Johnson? Are there any lingering concerns about those new structures to you?
No, I think specifically for K-State, there's both have been able to hear so much from both OCs and just their viewpoints. And specifically, that's just, I've heard more this offseason from both of them than I have from the Kansas side. And I'm very, very looking forward to K-State's offensive season.
Matt Wells is a really good offensive coach. I think there are folks who sort of forget how good of an offensive coach he was and how he had Utah State humming when he was there before he took the job at Texas Tech. I loved that hire at Texas Tech. I thought that was a fantastic hire. Didn't quite work. There were cultural things. Maybe, couldn't have succeeded at that level as a head coach. He also got kind of screwed over when they fired him and hired Joey McGuire. That was a shiesty situation. But he's a really good offensive coach. And again, Utah State's offense was really dang good when he was there in the latter part of the 2010s. So I think that's a really good hire. I'm excited to see what he can do with Avery Johnson, especially, and this is truly from an outside perspective, because obviously KU believes that Johnson can throw. There does seem to be some sort of narrative, whether deserved or undeserved, that, well, he's a great runner, but he can't throw the ball. And I know some rival fans have said that. You don't go to Elite 11 if you can't throw the ball. And Avery Johnson, well, I think he finished 5th or 6th at Elite 11. Kid can throw. He's a great athlete. I have seen him in person throw the ball and throw a pretty deep ball, especially. I'm not super worried about that, but I am excited to see what Matt Wells can do with him. Trenton, as for KU, because I know you're still close and embedded with the KU football program as well. Jeff Grimes coming from Baylor. I like the hire. I think the mix of what we're going to see from what Zabrowski likes, along with what Grimes likes, along with what Lance Leipold likes. I think that's going to be a really fun combination. And I think we might even see a little more creativity, or at least maybe some new nuances to the offense from what we saw under Andy Kotelnicki. And that's not a shot at Kotelnicki. I think he's a really good coordinator and a mostly good play caller. But I think this is an opportunity for KU to mix it up a little bit and even add a couple new flavors to an offense that has been pretty spicy, to, belabor the point, over these last few years.
Yeah, and they get to actually involve the 3 stud wide receivers that they have instead of running the ball and throwing it to the tight ends, which is fine after a while. But, I mean, you saw what they did in the bowl game. Those dudes are studs, and they deserve to have the ball in their hand. So, yeah, Kotelnicki will definitely have a challenge up at Penn State. But I like Grimes, and I like Zabrowski. I think that in tandem that KU might average 50 points per game this year with how electric that offense could be if Jalen Daniels stays healthy.
And that's always going to be the number one concern, right? Is can JD6 stay healthy? The thing about Grimes that was the knock on him when KU hired him, and I saw this from Baylor fans, the number one sort of culminating thing I saw from Baylor fans was, like Jeff Grimes, maybe not love, but like Jeff Grimes, it was not only his fault, or not even largely his fault, that Baylor's offense took a huge step back this year, but there are definitely some things he could have improved on. So a mostly positive response from Baylor fans at the school he was previously with. I think that will be helped. The maybe being a little too stagnant with third down calls, for example, or sometimes going from super creative to super milquetoast really quickly. I think that will be helped by Jim Zabrowski being quote unquote co-offensive coordinator. I know that's his job. I think the world of Jim Zabrowski. I think he is a great quarterbacks coach. And I think having him having more input in the game plan and being a secondary voice for some of those play calling and play sequencing decisions on the sideline, I think that's going to be really useful for this KU team. So I'm not worried about either one. I'm excited to see what the new wrinkles look like, because I'm sure what Connor Riley at K-State is going to put together will look a lot like Colin Klein's offenses, just like I'm sure a lot of what Jim Zabrowski's contributions for KU will look like will be similar to the last couple of years under Andy Kotelnicki, but now you've just got a couple new flavors in the room. So I'm very excited about that. Avery Johnson, we talked about this with Shehan last hour. How comfortable are you putting so much pressure on Avery Johnson to be the guy right away? And, I know that betting odds don't matter on the field. I understand that. But there's a lot of public pressure on him to be the dude right away, whether it is our friends in the desert saying he's got legit Heisman odds, or whether it is just K-State fans, and I'm not critiquing K-State fans for feeling this way, but thinking this is the dude. We're talking about like Michael Bishop, 2012 Colin Klein greatness. That's what this guy can be. That's what we think this guy is going to be right away. That's a lot of pressure. I think Avery Johnson's going to be a really good player. I just think that you need to be open to maybe it's not going to be perfect right away. He was great in the bowl game, but maybe it's not going to be perfect right away because he is so young and because his wide receiver core is fine at K-State. I don't think it's a great room. You've got to replace Ben Sinnott. I know they like the depth that is replacing him, but it's going to take some time for them to get up to speed. And we were talking about an NFL second-round pick in Ben Sinnott, or third round, whatever it was, when he went to the Commanders. So I just think by the end of the year, I think he'll be even far better than he's going to be come week one. But I think you need to be willing to have a little patience that maybe he's not going to be a true superstar right away, even if he will be a really good player.
I have a question to go off of that. And it pertains to something I saw on Twitter from somebody that works in where I used to work, different station, that talking about the Mountaineers. Phil Steele's preseason teams came out, right?
I believe they did, yes.
Yeah. So their quarterbacks, first team Cam Rising, second team Shador, third team Noah Fifita, yeah. And then fourth team Rocco Becht, Iowa State, right? He said, you simply can't tell me there are 4 better quarterbacks in the Big 12 than Garrett Green. I think there are. I think he's good. But
yeah.
I'd say there's 6 guys. I think the two guys that we're talking about are better than Garrett.
Yeah, I think the four you just mentioned, plus both Avery Johnson and Jalen Daniels.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good quarterback league.
Yeah. It's
like if you're
saying Garrett Green is your 7th best quarterback in your league,
that's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Look at the 6 who are ahead of him. Yeah, that's funny. And I understand regionally you feel differently, but yeah, that's pretty funny. I would say there are easily 4, if not 6 or more quarterbacks who are better than Green. So that's my only question about Avery Johnson. As for the KU roster, the biggest question is, what does KU have up front? That is number one with a bullet for me. Is there enough to compete with Kansas State? Because for the 15 wins in a row K-State has over KU, more often than not, the biggest difference, and admittedly, there have been plenty of difference makers. Some year it was quarterback. Many years it was head coach. There are a lot of difference makers. But on average, on balance, the biggest discrepancy between the two teams has been power in the trenches. I think KU's offensive line might be a B+ instead of an A- this year. I mean, it's hard to replace Dominic Pooney and Mike Nowitzki. And Amar'e Reed-Adams also leaving. You got the pieces to replace. I like the guys that are coming in, but it'll be good, maybe not great for KU, but they can compete on the offensive line. Defensively, do you have enough dudes? I like TJ Dunn inside. I'd like Tommy Withers inside. I just got a couple names confused, but that's fine. DJ Withers and Tommy Dunn. I spoonerized the names there. I like the beef to start. Do you have enough behind them? Do you have enough on the edge? You lost Austin Booker, obviously. You go out and you get by Job from Michigan State. Super high ceiling. Crazy high ceiling. He didn't do anything last year. He was a redshirt player, had 1 tackle over the course of the season. Can he contribute right away? Can you rely on the freshman, Deshaun Warner, one of the highest ranked recruits that KU has ever gotten out of Desert Edge High School in Arizona? Can he contribute to some degree right away? You're going to need Dak Brinkley as well, son of former NFLer Jasper Brinkley. Those guys. Jeremy Robinson. Yeah, you've got to have those. And he's the vet. Yes. He's got to step up, I think, more than anybody else, because he's now the elder statesman on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, Phil still likes him to be his second team defensive tackle.
And if he can do that, that's defensive tackle, really, not end.
Defensive end.
Okay, sorry. I was going to say, well,
I was crossing.
I might need to talk to Mr. Steele about that.
When you look at this, you cross things very easily.
Sure. But no, like, he's got to step up and make an impact. Probably similar to that of Austin Booker last year. He's not the athlete that Booker is, but you've got to have someone who's a reliable, get after the quarterback player. It's probably going to have to be Jeremy Robinson. So that's the number one concern I've got with the KU roster just as a whole. The other question I had for the two teams, and this is fun, who is the best wide receiver on each team? And I don't know that it necessarily means anything for prognosticating what this season is going to look like, but for K-State, they've got a whole lot of guys who I think could be that player. Meanwhile, KU's got 3. They've got a few, Doug Emilion is outside that group, and I think he's a nice player. He's a great wide receiver blocker, but you've got 3. Quentin Skinner, LJ Arnold, and Luke Grimm. If you've listened to the show and listened to us talk KU football at all for the last 4 years, you know how much I love Luke Grimm. Quentin Skinner is an incredible story. Lawrence Arnold is an awesome story as well. They all have a cool story. They're all super talented. I think KU has an argument for having the best wide receiver room in the Big 12, which is really something. Depending on what you like, I mean, it's probably Skinner's big playability, Grimm's ability to just always be open. Arnold maybe is the most well-rounded of the entire group. I think that's a fun question for both teams. Who is the best wide receiver on the roster? Last question I've got for you before we get to commercial here. Last year, it was a huge storyline. Would the G5 newcomers, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, what would their struggles look like? How much would they struggle transitioning into being Big 12 programs? Specifically, would they have enough depth and size from being American Athletic Conference teams or independent to being Big 12 teams? And generally speaking, the answer was no. UCF was the closest thing, but generally speaking, no. Is the Pac-12 going to have a similar type of struggle? They've already got Power 5 rosters on those teams, Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah. They're not going to have those sorts of worries. But Utah, as good as I think they're going to be, these are new road trips. They haven't been to Stillwater. They haven't been to the Bill when it's especially loud, and they don't play at the Bill this year, but you know what I'm saying. They've got new environments they're going to have to go to, challenging environments, more challenging than some of those Pac-12 teams they would play. What sort of adjustments are they going to have to make? Or will they be able to hit the ground running, and will they immediately take the Big 12 by storm this year? I think it's something that will probably take the majority of the regular season, if not the entire regular season, to really know the answer to that question. We'll talk more KU football with Michael Swain here in just about 10 minutes for Jayhawk Weekly. First things first, though, we've got What Is Wrong With You coming up next on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. Let's find some idiots, shall we? It is What Is Wrong With You on 580 Sports Talk. Our current winner so far this week, we found him yesterday. I called him the self-own 911. Guy tried to burglarize a car. The owner came out and beat the crap out of him. So the perp then ran into the guy's house, locked himself in the bathroom, and called 911 to say he was being assaulted.
What an idiot.
Hey, buddy, why do you think you were being assaulted in the first place? All right, Spencer, we had a reverse of what happened last week where we both picked the same story, but you were second, so I got to read it. we both picked the same story, but you found it first today. So I will let you go ahead and read this banger from the Sunshine State.
The guy's mugshot is even funnier. I don't know if can you try and get it on the screen
While
I read it.
Let me pull this up for us. I will be able to get this on YouTube.
2 men were arrested after nearly 3,000 pounds of trash were removed from the wait, no, I read
You're
that
reading
one.
my story.
Sorry.
Nah!
That's your one. That's your mugshot. Sorry. I don't. That guy's now I'm doing it wrong. I don't know why I did that.
Psyched you out.
No, I clicked. They're both Florida, so I was reading the tab wrong, and then I was like, that doesn't make sense. All right, a wanted Florida man was taken into custody on Saturday after his phone tipped off deputies that he was hiding from them in the ceiling of a business, authority said. Polk County Sheriff's Office said 38-year-old Joshua Garrett was arrested and charged with resisting arrest and felony criminal mischief. According to the sheriff's office, deputies responded to the disturbance near US 98 North and Duff Road in Lakeland, Florida. When the deputies arrived, they were told the man causing the disturbance, later identified as Garrett, had left the business. After identifying the man as Garrett, deputies learned he was wanted for violating his probation, which he was given after being convicted of burglary, providing false information to a pawnbroker, and trafficking of stolen property.
What a specific crime, providing false information to a pawnbroker.
So by that, I'm thinking he stole some products and he pawned the products off by trafficking those stolen property to the pawn shop, and he gave false information there.
I think you are correct.
Deputies began searching for Garrett in the area and stopped by the business where he was employed. When they arrived, deputies confirmed Garrett walked into the business but never left. They did an initial search of the property but couldn't find him. So they believed Garrett could be in the building and saw a few ceiling tiles were out of place. The deputies then heard Garrett's phone ringing and started searching above the tiles. As they searched, investigators spotted a hand sticking out from under the insulation. Quote, thankfully, the hand was attached to the body, Garrett's, and not just some random disembodied hand, the sheriff's office said in a post on Facebook. Quote, that would have taken the situation into a whole other direction, end quote. Garrett was ultimately removed from the ceiling and transported to the Polk County Jail for his warrants. He was also charged with resisting and felony criminal mischief after causing about $1,000 worth of damage to his employee's ceiling.
Oh my gosh, that is too funny.
Yes.
That is so good. My story today is also from Florida, Marion County, where 2 men were arrested after nearly 3,000 pounds of trash were removed from the Ocala National Forest, according to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. In the release, the commission announced that it began investigating the forest earlier this month after a dump site was discovered with 2,780 pounds of household garbage, including furniture and appliances. We have a picture here. It really is just trash, just dumped in the middle of the woods. Detectives said they managed to track the trash back to an address in Ocala, which had an active code enforcement case with the city. Why is that? Because all of this trash had previously been just jammed in a trailer on the address's lawn. So the city they were, going to punish him, sanction him for this. So to get rid of it, he just dumped it in the national forest. Photos from that case revealed the same trash found in the forest was originally found in that trailer, connecting 41-year-old Gary Cardwell to the dump site. He was arrested after telling officers he was indeed the one who dumped the litter. He also told officers, though, he was working with another man, 37-year-old Johnny Reese, in order to dump the trash. Man, he sang like a canary. After Cardwell was taken into custody, investigators say, you'll never believe this. They also found methamphetamine, fentanyl, and drug paraphernalia on him. Reese was also arrested on accusations he owned the truck and trailer used to dump the trash in the forest. All the garbage was eventually removed, including these 2 guys. That garbage was placed into jail.
Yeah, this is the mugshot I was talking about. Sorry, I opened the wrong one because both are Florida men.
Yeah, they are. They're looking rough. I will tell you that. Both these dudes look rough.
Especially Gary.
Yeah, Gary Cardwell has seen better days.
He looks so pissed off.
So that is our selection of stories for today. Spencer, I'm going to vote for yours right off the top here. These dudes dumping trash in the forest, they suck. Turn off your phone if you're committing a crime.
And
Turn off the ringer.
You're hiding in the ceiling for the police. Like, come on, at least be a better criminal than you are.
I think that one wins the week.
It's got to be the weekly winner right now.
That's an easy call. That is our new weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You. Turn off your phone while you're committing crimes. And also just, don't commit crimes. With that, Jayhawk Weekly's coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk. Joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline, as he does every Tuesday at this time, is the one and only Michael Swain, who covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. That's where you can find his great work. You can follow him on Twitter as well at mswain247. Man, Michael, I consider myself, something just shy of a workaholic. I swear, you're working 26 hours a day. I swear, you are putting in hours this weekend, my friend.
Well, here's the funny part is I'm sitting here at my desk in my girlfriend's home, and she just cackled at you saying that. So I think that probably proves the point that I am working a lot, much to the dismay of, I guess I should probably say my fiance now. It's probably
That's
a lot more
right.
apt. I'm going to get in trouble for that. No, but yeah, it's crazy, guys. Like college sports are a 12-month a year thing right now. I think there's really in the calendar, I think maybe a week, 2 weeks that aren't going to have some sort of news. And that's kind of 2-week period at the end of July in between media days and when fall camp starts. So it's crazy and it's a part of the job. So I can't complain, guys. I talk about sports for a living. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet gig. I think we would agree with you on that. And man, it was pretty sweet for KU this weekend too. They gave you a lot to talk about, a lot to write about. It was a big time weekend for KU football recruiting. Let's start with the transfer that came in over the last few days. what we assume will probably be KU's new starting center, Bryce Foster, previously of Texas A&M. We had talked about him a while back because he's also going to be on the track team at KU, and we talked about the level of importance that holds for him. How big of a deal is this for KU? I mean, you've got to replace Mike Nowitzki, who was such a stalwart on this offensive line the last 3 years. So how much, well, frankly, will there be any drop-off now bringing in a guy with the pedigree of Foster?
No, I don't think there will be a drop-off. And I think, if anything, there's some reason to believe there could be some elevation, because you look at the size differential between Mike Nowitzki, who is about, 6'4", about, 300, 305 pounds, to Bryce Foster, who's 6'5", 330 pounds. Like, there's a big difference there in terms of holding your own in the center of your offensive line. And he's played a lot of football, multi-year starter at Texas A&M. It says a lot about who he is physically that he was able to start at Texas A&M as a true freshman, right? That's insane.
Yeah.
In the SEC, starting as a true freshman in the trenches, that's just wild. So it's a huge addition for KU. And I think Lance Leipold, in his head coaching career, at least in FBS, has been very blessed, right? He had Mike Nowitzki for 4 years, and before that, he had a 4-year starter at center. So this will be the third center he has had in the last basically 9 or 10 years. And that's just crazy to think about in and of itself. And the fact, too, that Bryce Foster has 2 seasons of eligibility remaining, which means he can start for KU this year and also next year, that's even bigger, because now you're talking about not having to go find another center in the portal next offseason, right? Not having to go back to the well again. So I think generally, up and down, there is not a more impactful addition, I think, for KU this offseason than Bryce Foster.
And especially on the offensive line, that's a big deal, right? And, that's the one spot, the one position group that we have seen proof of concept in recent years. You can't just build it year to year. Colorado is trying to do that. It doesn't work. You need continuity along with technique and size and athleticism and all of that. So to have a guy who can plug in there in a year that's already got some turnover on the line, who you're going to have Bryce Foster for 2 seasons, that's got to be a real boon going forward for this team as well.
Totally. And you look at, there's always going to be some year-to-year kind of movement, right, on a position like the offensive line where you start 5 guys. But if you think back to think ahead to even next season, right, you're looking at KU having the potential to return someone like Foster, and having Kobe Baines and Nolan Gorsica is going to be back too. And obviously Calvin Clemens will be another year in the system. And so you can look ahead now and you're not wondering, oh man, like they're going to have even more spots to fill after next season, right? So it's a really huge thing to have that continuity. And for someone like Foster too, it's a pretty big deal that he can go to Kansas and be a part of the track program as well. It's going to be, I think, a really impactful thing for him, because he is super passionate about track. And the great part about KU and their practice schedule is the fact that they practice in the mornings, right? Practice usually over around 11 a.m. Well, track practices in the afternoons and evenings. So in the springtime, there's no issue with Foster doing both and being able to attend both practices. And that's not the case at every college, right? A lot of colleges do practice in the afternoon, and that creates some of that conflict. So it really is, like, I think it's a great spot for Foster. I think it's a great opportunity for KU to improve at a really important position group. And look, I think for this year, you talk about a team that has a lot of veterans, right? A lot of seniors. Well, this is the type of guy that fits that. It's a win now player who also has the benefit of having another year of eligibility.
Michael Swain is our guest. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. Joins us every Tuesday at this time on 580 Sports Talk for Jayhawk Weekly via the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Let's get to the high school recruiting from this weekend, and a massive weekend for KU. I want to start with the local product that KU added, Brandon Schmelzley from Axtell. He might not be the highest rated of the recruits, but small town Kansas kids, that has been a staple of program building at K-State for a long, long time. So I think it's a big deal to get a kid like that to commit to KU. Clearly had an interest in KU from the very beginning. What is he bringing to the table? I know we've got a lot of folks in that Axtell community who listen to our show, Michael. What is Brandon Schmelzley going to add, likely playing full-time at defensive back in the Big 12?
Yeah. Well, look, I think he's someone that, you hear the term athlete thrown around a lot, I think, in recruiting. But when you think of like the stereotypical like you're recruiting this kid as an athlete. Like, this is who Brandon is. He's a quarterback at his high school. He also plays some defensive back. He does multiple sports, right? He plays some basketball. He's really good at track. He's run some times, sub 11 times, right? Which is kind of your benchmark for speed, right? I heard today that, people are looking back at his sophomore track and looking at the times he did then. And, he's a guy that this year then was the long jump champion in 1A. So generally, like up and down, he's just a good athlete. And I'm a big fan of taking guys that have size and are good athletes, and you can kind of work on the positional specificity, in college, right? That's what college is for. So it's a guy that I think for Brian Boland, I think he's going to be pretty fired up about it because he gets to have kind of a moldable piece of clay in Brandon. And so I think it's a great addition for KU. It's the kind of addition, KU fans probably want to hear this, but like K-State under Bill Schneider would have taken a kid like this and turned him into, a multi-year starter and an all-conference player. So for KU, right, that's what the type of program KU wants to be. Someone that can come in, learn for a couple years, not going to start as a freshman, not going to play a lot, maybe as a freshman or sophomore, but then by the time there may be a redshirt sophomore or a redshirt junior, they're contributing. And they're going to have kind of that program pride that I think a lot of fans like talking about, right? Being a Kansas kid and all that. So I think top to bottom, it's a really nice addition for KU, and one that I think is going to be underrated just when you look flat out at the offer list and whenever he does get his rating.
I was super excited looking at the list of all the guys who committed that KU was really able to add a lot of talent on the edges defensively. Garrett Martin from Arizona, Adrian Holly from Indiana as well, and also Josiah Hammond from Tulsa, Oklahoma on the defensive line on the interior. That's a lot of beef. That's a lot of athleticism up front. And I'm curious how you feel about the future at that position, Michael, because while it's a concern for me and for many this year, given a lack of a lot of veteran depth, between all the dudes who are now freshmen this year with Brinkley and Warner, etc., you bring in a pretty talented group like this for the 25 class. It feels like KU has put a lot of emphasis on making sure they're not going to get pushed around in the trenches defensively.
Right. And I think so much of this, too, is getting into recruiting to this four-man front, at least defensively, where, for a while, a lot of the focus was getting transfers and getting guys that can come in and help that transition happen. And meanwhile, you can look at some guys internally like Tommy Dunn and DJ Withers who have really developed their bodies, right, and really have taken the steps forward to where those guys really do fit what KU looks for. And now it's about trying to find that next batch of players. And you think over the two cycles, KU's going to bring in 4 defensive ends, and they're all going to kind of be, there are some similarities between, Dekias Brinkley and Deshaun Warner, both really fast twitch guys, maybe not exactly the tallest, not 6'5 plus, right? Both are kind of in that 6'3 range, but they've got great twitch off the line of scrimmage, and that's so important. But then you look at guys like Adrian Hall and Garrett Martin, who just committed. Those guys have great length and great size, and maybe can play more on the strong side. So, you look at those 4, and you could easily see those 4 making up 2 deep for Kansas in a couple of years. And I think that is so important to have these guys that can come in as freshmen, again, be program players, right? And of course, right, Dekias and Deshaun might play as freshmen because of the way the defensive end rotation could play out. But down the road, you're looking at those 4 and saying, yeah, you like the potential that you have with them. I'm really high on Adrian Hall. Like, the offer list isn't super sexy. The 24/7 Sports composite rating isn't great, but he's a basketball player, right? In terms of the 6'6", about a 6'10" wingspan, really good athlete getting off the line of scrimmage. And you can work with players like that and coach them up, right? You can't coach up a stiff guy who's 6'3" and doesn't have a great wingspan. So I think it's a really big addition. Then you look at someone like Josiah Hammond, right? He fits the mold of what KU's trying to do at defensive tackle. It's take guys that for other schools may be considered undersized, and using that athletic abilities that those guys have, and then adding weight on it to make them really mobile defensive tackles. And that's exactly the type of traits that KU wants to have at defensive tackles. So I think for KU, right, the trenches are so important in college football. We see it in just football period, but we see it every year, right? The teams that have the best lines go really far. And that's what KU's trying to do, is starting to build out those offensive and defensive line rooms to where it's talent that's in the program for several years. We've seen how good player retention is under Lance Leipold, And having guys that are in the program that know the scheme and buy into the culture, right, that can really create some huge benefits for you down the road.
We're joined by Michael Swain of Falk.net and 24/7 Sports on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at mswain247. And talking about guys that that KU got commitments from, one that just announced his commitment about 50 minutes ago was Terry Shelton. Unfortunately, he didn't make his commitment to KU. How close was he to KU, the 3-star receiver out of Texas?
Probably not super close. You look at someone that commits after a visit, right? That probably tells you that, you're in the running for that guy, that he maybe wasn't, maybe you weren't probably in his top 1 or top 2, right? So for KU, wide receiver is still a huge position of need. KU's probably looking at taking 3 high school receivers this year. KU's losing a lot and they're going to go to the portal, but getting high school receivers is going to be really important. And so right now it seems like that's going to be a position that I'm paying a lot of attention to here over the next couple weeks, because I think KU's in the mix with some other guys, but it's not like a nailed on like it was maybe with some of those defensive line guys where you're looking at it saying, yep, KU's definitely the team to beat. Going to be really hard to beat them. And that's not really the case. It feels like a wide receiver. We'll see what happens this weekend, and then kind of going into that July period as everyone kind of makes their decisions. And as decisions are made, there is some crossover between KU and some other schools, right? So if there is a wide receiver that commits to a different school, maybe a wide receiver KU's after can no longer commit to said school, and that narrows their options. So there's so many ways that the numbers can play out with this wide receiver recruiting group that it kind of is hard to project right now who's going to end up in KU's class. But I think over the next kind of couple weeks, we'll see some movement there.
Overall, Michael, just at wide receiver specifically, like for this year, it's kind of the opposite of the defensive end group and defensive line group, really, because this year, KU might have the best wide receiver top 3 in the entire Big 12. After that, though, it is a total shrug of the shoulders. Who knows? How desperately does KU need to add at least a couple of bodies to the wide receiver class for 2025?
Well, so, I mean, it's kind of the question, right? We're talking high school or portal. If we're talking portal, is really important, right? KU's going to need multiple starting caliber wide receivers in the portal. For high school, it's important because if you get someone, let's just say Isaiah Mosey, right, from Lee Summit North, he's someone that could start at Kansas and as a underclassman and play a lot, even as a true freshman, right? That's how talented he is, and that's something that KU's going to try and get him sold on. So there's kind of a different question than if you're going to talk about maybe some of the other guys KU's after, because there are some guys that KU's recruiting that are probably going to be more developmental guys at wide receiver. But there are other ones, again, Isaiah Mosey being one, Jalen Cooper from the San Antonio area is another one, I think. Those are guys that have the talent that can come in and play early that maybe can give you some help as a rotational piece at wide receiver to where maybe you don't have to go to the portal for another wide receiver in addition to that. So I think for KU, it's important to get these wide receivers on board. I think if you can land guys that have that talent to maybe help you out as a true freshman, I think that's even more important considering what KU is going to lose and the fact they're going to have to go to the portal. And look, wide receivers in the portal are not going to be cheap. And I think Kansas is going to change its approach this offseason upcoming, next winter, to where maybe you got to, get in the NIL game for some of these guys. Because I think trying to get talented starting caliber wide receivers at the Big 12 level is not going to be something you can do effectively without using resources. So really interested to see how it all plays out.
Final question for you, Michael, and we're a little short on time here. We've got about a minute. Should I be concerned about the tight ends going into this year? I like the idea of Trevor Cardell. I love Jared Casey for what he's able to do, but without that number one guy like Deshaun Hanukkah sadly could have been, should I be at all worried about that group?
Not that I was worried. It should be about defensive end. I don't think I feel okay about it, if I'm being honest with you guys. Like Trevor Cardell, if he can stay healthy, I think he'll have a really good season. I think that's just been the question for him in recent years. We all know who Jared Casey is. I think Leighton Cure is going to be an underrated addition. I'm not saying he's going to go to the NFL like Dominic Pooney, but I think people could look back in a couple of years and say, oh, man, they got this kid from Fort Hays State, and he's having some production, right? He's a guy that I just think fits what Jeff Grimes wants at tight end, where he's kind of this modern mold of a tight end where he's got some wide receiver qualities, but he can block as well. So I don't feel super concerned about it as I do maybe a couple other positions on the team.
So I'm hearing Leighton is better than Lincoln then.
Oh, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Maybe. We'll see.
Michael Swain covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Go follow him on Twitter as well, at mswain247. Joining us here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Appreciate the time as always, Michael. Talk to you soon, man.
Awesome, guys. Talk to you next week.
That's Michael Swain of Fog.net. We've got 1 hour left of 580 Sports Talk today. We'll be back after the news here from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. 580 Sports Talk's going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski here, Spencer Dupuis there, Trenton Kraxner over there, Dan Lucero somewhere. He's off on paternity leave this week. He will join us coming back next Monday. Hashtag the return. We've got a busy final hour of the show for you today. Final hour for a couple days, in fact. No show tomorrow. We are off for the Juneteenth holiday. Yeah. And then the Royals play at 2:37 on Thursday.
So our series preview segment is really series preview.
Yeah,
segment.
It's really I guess I didn't think about that, but yeah, it is a full series preview because by the next time you hear us on the air, they'll be done with the A's.
Yeah, like that series will be over.
So we'll preview the whole series. That's a good point. We'll preview the whole series coming up a little bit later on this hour. We also have our 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to and some major news that could influence the way we consume the NFL on TV. If you haven't been following the Sunday Ticket lawsuit, whether or not you have ever paid for Sunday Ticket, it could influence your ability to get it in the future or the accessibility of out-of-market games in the future. That's coming up later on in the hour. We want you to be a part of the show. We want to hear your thoughts on anything we're talking about on the show today. You can hit us up on the Top City Metal Supply text line. What's that number? It's 785-272-9429. And, of course, our YouTube channel called 580 Sports Talk. That's where you can go subscribe while you are there, and you can watch along with the show today. The biggest news of the day, this could get an entire segment. My favorite movie might be getting a sequel. One of my favorite movies.
What's one of your favorite movies?
Spaceballs.
What?
Variety just posted an hour ago. A Spaceballs sequel is in development at Amazon MGM Studios. Josh Gad is attached to star, and he will also produce alongside Mel Brooks. I love Spaceballs. I think I know every single word in the movie. I have many times watched it and just quoted the entire thing along with the entire movie. I love it so much. We are finally, decades later, going to get Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. We've been waiting since 1987, friends. Well, not me. I wasn't alive.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Collectively, since 1987.
Another movie that's coming out with a sequel in about actually a month from tomorrow, I think. Twisters.
I've never seen Twister.
I've seen it once.
I've never seen it. I know people who are pumped about it, though. About the sequel.
The sequel, I think, is going to be better because it's kind of like not old school. It's like new school.
Modern CGI and everything.
Yeah,
that'll probably help.
And
I think my wife's excited to see it.
And just like the modernness of the storyline. Like more people are storm chasing than just like
fair.
Than just the meteorologist people and those like core group of weird people that do it.
That makes sense.
Not like not trying to say it.
No. I know what you're saying.
But like there's just a group of people that are storm chasers, and then there's meteorologists.
Yeah.
The
battle.
Now there's like more people that do it.
The feud.
Like you see people on like YouTube Live or whatever. Just
I know it's crazy. Yeah. When there were the tornadoes out in Westmoreland, there were all sorts of folks from all over the Midwest who had gone out there to chase the storm. Vance on YouTube says, "May the Schwartz be with you, BD." I love that movie so much, man. No, don't make a fuss. I'm just plain yogurt. I could do the whole thing. I could do that for the show for an hour and a half. I could just go straight through quoting and using the same inflection as the entire movie. I've seen it so many times. We should get to some sports headlines, though. How about our 580 Sports Talk daily headlines? This actually came out yesterday. We never got a chance to get to it, though. The first round of voting for the All-Star game for 2024, 3 Royals are in the top 5 at their respective positions. In fact, 3 Royals are in the top 3 at their respective positions. Those players are, unsurprisingly, at shortstop, Bobby Witt Jr. He is number 2 in shortstop voting behind Gunnar Henderson. Unfortunately, Bobby is going to have some ground to make up. He is 200,000 votes behind Gunnar Henderson. Royals fans, I know you love to vote for All-Star games. Hop on it here because your boy Bobby needs some help. Gunnar Henderson is awesome, but Bobby Witt Jr., he is second in voting for the All-Star game. That's enough to get you in, no doubt, though. I think it's the top 2 at every spot get in no matter what. At catcher, also number 2, Salvador Perez. Understandable there. He is not leading, though, because Adley Rutschman is beating him also by 204,000 votes. Adley Rutschman's awesome. He is a star. He rules. He's already a 6-time All-Star.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Salvi is the 6-time All-Star. Rutschman
can't be. He just came in the league like 2 years ago.
Yeah, he was drafted in 2019. He's been in the All-Star game before, though, has he not?
Last year.
That's what I thought. Let me pull a baseball reference here.
The Orioles have
last year.
Such a bright future.
It's crazy.
But not this year, unfortunately, pitching-wise. Have you seen all their starting pitchers that are about to have TJ?
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah.
They've got Corbin Burns and then Trenton. That's their starting rotation right now. You're gonna get about 60 starts this year. So I hope you've been loosening up.
They need bullpen help as well. That's one of their weaknesses is bullpen help. So as much as I want to see the Orioles like shine in the playoffs for how bad they've been for so long, I just think not having pitching is going to kill them unless they can acquire like 2 starters and back end of the bullpen help.
I imagine they will trade one of those prospects for someone. We heard about Heston Kierstad possibly being on the market the other day.
I think there's their catcher first base prospect I just saw earlier today is on the trade block as well.
Yeah, probably don't need a great catcher prospect right now. If you're the Orioles, I think you're probably set at that position for the next 15 years or so.
They're good right now. I just wonder when these guys need contracts, is the new ownership going to pay?
Are you insinuating that the Baltimore Orioles might be cheap?
I'm insinuating that their past ownership was. I know nothing about their new ownership.
That's fair.
Because they just took over in January.
That is definitely fair. The other Royal who's currently top 3 in voting, I'm going to be honest with you.
I was confused when I saw this.
I don't know who. I would have probably guessed Vinny, honestly, at first base. That's who I would have guessed. Second baseman Michael Massey,
who hasn't played a good chunk of the season.
Yeah, and he's way behind. Jose Altuve leads. Marcus Semien is second. That's a fairly close race. Michael Massey is over 200,000 votes behind Semien for second, so he's not a lock by any means. Bro, I was not expecting that. Michael Massey to be top 3. Good for him, though. Shout out to Palos Park, Illinois. But yeah, those are your 3 Royals who are currently top 3 in their respective positions in voting. We can also tell you if you are interested in voting for the All-Star game, Phase 1 of voting ends June 27th. You can vote as many as 5 times every day at MLB.com if you would like to continue voting. The leading vote getter in each league during Phase 1 will receive an automatic spot in their team's starting lineup. Beyond those 2 players, the top 2 vote getters at every position and the top 6 outfielders will all advance to Phase 2 of the voting. It was a lot easier when you could just vote.
Yeah.
We don't need phases. This isn't the NASCAR playoff setup, guys. Let's just vote. Come on. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be, please. But that's headline number 1. 3 Royals right now in very legitimate all-star contention, not even including pitchers, in which I don't think it's impossible we could see 2. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, I don't know if both would actually go.
Well, that's also true, too.
Even if they did get it, will both go? Because who's going to pitch? It also depends on where your rotation is at the
right.
If you are projecting out your rotation, where is your number 1 and number 2 guys going to be? Because those are the 2 guys that you're projected to have a shot at the All-Star game.
I will say, even if, Cole Reagans gets added to the All-Star roster and he can't actually play because he pitches Sunday before the game, it'd still be pretty cool to get named an All-Star.
Oh, yeah.
And I think both Reagans and Lugo have a chance. Lugo probably would be first, Reagans second in terms of likelihood. I doubt they both will, but it's not an impossibility right now.
Yeah. But you know what's also not an impossibility?
What's that?
The Chiefs and Royals coming to Kansas.
That's right.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. Kansas House passed the Star Bond proposal for the Chiefs with bipartisan support, 84-38. That bill heads to the Senate now to see if they can also get bipartisan support for that bill as well. Obviously, we're way off from that potential, like the actual, like it actually happening, but it's a big move already. And this has really come out of the last, I'd say, like 2 weeks. I think it was the Dan's last day. We were getting like a commenter saying, "You guys got to talk about this. You guys talk about this," because some delegate was on some Kansas City sports station talking about it, but there was no actual like headline about it, so we didn't really know anything. That's been 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks tomorrow.
So this has also led to plenty of people getting feisty on Twitter today. Somebody in the Kansas legislature during today's discussion said, quote, "The state of Missouri is known for losing professional sports teams." And Mayor Quentin Lucas of Kansas City responded by saying, "I see pure class is on display." And
he also responded to the fact that Missouri and Kansas City haven't had their time to speak. He said, "We haven't had our time to speak yet."
Wrong, incorrect. You have absolutely had your time to speak.
Did you see that tweet though?
No, I did not see that one.
If you scroll down on his timeline, you can see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys had a whole ass vote to determine this, whether or not you had gotten your chance to speak, man.
I think it's funny. The top comment on this tweet from Matt Evans of KMBC and KC says, "They're not coming to Kansas. LOL. Keep dreaming," from somebody at Jerry KCG Young.
Well, Jerry, I don't think it's above a 50% chance, but it's not impossible. And
it's really not impossible at this point. It's more possible than it's probably ever been.
And if the Royals feel like Kansas is going to give us a better deal than Missouri is, then they will move.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure they would love to stay where they are, because I'm sure the construction is easier when you're close by. I assume there's various tax and other financial things that go with moving over the border versus just staying in Missouri. If either team gets a better deal from Kansas and they have to pay less to move and to have their new stadium, they're going to take it. That's how these teams operate. Right or wrong, that's how these teams operate. And no one should be surprised at this point. Absolutely nobody should be surprised at this point.
Yeah.
It's only going to get more intense. Folks, it is only going to get more intense from this point forward with the stadium situation. The next headline for me, you know what? Why don't we stick with stadium stuff here?
Yeah, let's stick it.
Let's stick with this. The Carolina Panthers, they're a really bad football team. Really, really bad football team. And now they are also possibly building some momentum toward a move of their own. Now, would that be to a new city? Are they going to move to St. Louis and become the St. Louis Panthers? Probably not. Could they move out of the city of Charlotte to the outlying areas? Oh, what does that sound like? Something we literally just talked about. This is from James Dater, who writes for SB Nation. All is not well with the Carolina Panthers, and it has nothing to do with years of putrid performance. The Charlotte City Council will hear statements from the public Monday. That's today, or yesterday, excuse me. You idiot. That was yesterday. About whether or not taxpayers believe $650 million in revenue should be given to Tepper Sport Entertainment to renovate Bank of America Stadium as a part of a $1.3 billion proposal to upgrade the home of the Panthers. Over 60% of residents in Charlotte polled on this matter disagreed with the proposal, which would exchange the $650 million for a 20-year guarantee that the team would not leave Charlotte, North Carolina. The quote-unquote guarantee, though, actually has a 15-year out. They don't even have to go for the entire 20 years. And they would then pay any outstanding debt in exchange for being able to move.
Is he the same owner that started the construction of their practice facility in Rock Hill, South Carolina?
Correct.
And then decided to just
bail
on it?
Yes. And now he's embroiled in a lawsuit with the county and with the city of Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Because there was a half-built facility that they had to demolish. That
they had built with public money. Yeah, David Tepper is a bum. He is a big, fat bum.
He is, now that Dan Snyder's gone, I think he's enemy number one in the owners.
Easily. He is bum number one among NFL owners. Who would
be number two?
Ooh. Some people would tell you Kroenke, because even though he paid for much of his own stadium in LA, he screwed over St. Louis royally.
Yeah.
So some would tell you Kroenke.
Raiders owner. Right?
I think he's just an idiot. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think he's as malicious as others. I think he's just an idiot.
Yeah.
Which, some players would tell you Clark Hunt. With his F minus. Chris Jones wouldn't. He'll beat up anyone. He's got, what did he say? 2 middle fingers for anyone who gives my owner an F minus. But yes, some folks aren't huge fans of Clark Hunt anyway.
I don't know. He might have not said the same thing last early September when he was sitting in the stands watching the game.
Yeah, when he was sitting in a suite with his agents watching instead of playing week 1. Yeah, you're probably right about that. So this stinks. This rule is a joke. Dater goes on to write over at SB Nation, there has been a lot of mistrust around the stadium itself in Charlotte. Completed in 96. It's not even 30 years old, but there's been a back and forth on whether what level of renovation that stadium actually needs. That's a typo. My apologies. Fans anticipated any redesign for the stadium would include either a full or partial dome, which would allow the team to host a Super Bowl, as well as other clear-cut amenities for fans. Instead, the first stage of the revamp and the only thing guaranteed are superfluous, along with some restroom additions. A change in the type of seating, stadium restrooms, city view patio on the 500 level, an update to the scoreboard, etc. So not actually making the game any more comfortable. There are legitimate questions why this first stage is set to cost over $650 million without actually offering too much to fans. By the way, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday when we were doing stadium stuff. I am not trying to be Eugene V. Debs here. That's not who I am. That's not how I necessarily feel about this. But that being said, do you know what the net worth of David Tepper is?
A lot of money. He bought Charlotte FC as well. Wasn't he? Didn't he work at, wasn't he high up in Goldman Sachs?
He was a hedge fund manager.
Yeah.
$20.6 billion. Brother, you do not need $650 million for nothing. You don't need it. I promise you. Unless the city of Charlotte is going to be a part owner of the stadium. In which case, okay, ask for it. That's what Jacksonville's doing. I don't know if we ever actually got to that headline a few weeks ago.
I don't think we did.
Jacksonville is a co-owner of their stadium, the former Gator Bowl, Everbank Stadium, with the Jaguars. They co-own it. So they have agreed to pay for about half each of their newly refurbished stadium. They're going to tear down part of it, rebuild part of it, and just refurbish the rest. They're each going to pay for half, and the Jaguars are going to cover the extra costs not fit into the original budget. Things always, like stadiums, go over budget. I think that makes sense. Are you still saying they should pay for the whole thing themselves? Well, that's a discussion for another day. But if you're going to do a part private, part public stadium agreement, I think that makes more sense. David Tepper, you do not need $650 million to add a patio for season ticket holders. You just do not. You don't need that from Charlotte. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
What's your next headline for us?
We're going back to Major League. Well, not Major League Baseball, but
AAA baseball.
AAA baseball. Major League Baseball sent a memo to farm directors Tuesday indicating that beginning on June 25th, so here in just 7 days, all AAA games will use the automated ball strike ABS challenge system as opposed to the full ABS, which was previously used for half the week. The move is another indication that the league is inching toward implementing the challenge system at the major league level, though Rob Manfred has said the move is still at least another season away from happening. This is big, I think. Because
I would agree. The closer we are to getting this to the major leagues, the better.
Yeah, especially with everything that's umpiring and the ability that you can go on and see how graded, the ability of grades for these umpires.
No,
and
I agree.
Everything that's happened in the last couple of weeks with ejections and people not, I just think the last couple of weeks specifically, there's been a lot of stuff about people getting ejected for the wrong reasons or challenges that are judgment calls or what. Like we saw that in the Royals game. The judgment call that can't be challenged or whatever it was.
Yeah, there's that. Then the Cubs game last night, the umpire behind the plate missed 27 calls. 13 strikes, 14 balls.
Wow.
27 in one game. And now sometimes is the score, the strike zone on TV or Statcast, can those be maybe a little too rigid? Sure. Okay, fine. But come on. And it's every game almost. Someone has a bad appearance. The best umpire, the best balls and strikes caller in Major League Baseball, Pat Hoberg, just got in trouble with the sport because he was gambling.
Yeah.
Come on. What are we doing? We need this challenge system. It's not taking all the power away from the umpires. They're still going to have final authority. They are still going to call the balls and strikes, but having the challenge system is going to make the game much smoother, and it's going to avoid the egregious errors. And it's going to help, I think, the quality of the games as well, because if you're an umpire and you don't want to be shown up by the computers, you're going to do a better job to get it right in the first place.
Yeah.
I think this is good that it's coming to AAA. The fact that it has been in the independent leagues, now in affiliated ball, now all year in AAA, that to me says it's coming to Major League Baseball. It's just a matter of when. And that's a good thing. We need to have that because, God, the state of officiating is bad. Well, that's in general, but umpiring in Major League Baseball.
I like the way that they do it too, like the hand on the head.
Mm-hmm.
I want to challenge like right away.
Yep, it's just simple signal. They check it right away, update if they need to, move on. It is quick, simple. Dan shared the story with us last summer. He had gone to a minor league game down in Florida when he was on vacation, and they had the challenge system in place. And he said it's great. It doesn't stop the game at all. The flow is totally fine. Quick signal, they update the call, boom, you're right back to action. There's no downside to this as far as I'm concerned. People always get scared about robot umpires because they think they're actually going to take the umpires off the field and replace them with Cletus from Fox Sports. No, it's just a computer. It's a camera and a computer that determines was this actually in the zone or not. That's all it does. This is a positive. We need to have it as soon as possible. Just about done with our headlines. Should we get to the playoff roundup?
Let's do it.
It's time for the 580 Sports Talk Playoff Roundup.
This will be the final edition of the playoff roundup to include the NBA because the finals went final last night. It was close for about 9.5 minutes. Then the Celtics went on a run in which the Mavericks forgot how to play basketball for the final 2.5 minutes of the first quarter. And that was it. Every time the Mavericks did anything that looked competent, the Celtics slammed the door right back in their face. They cruised to a 20-plus point victory, and the Celtics have now won their 18th NBA championship. That is the most of any team all time, surpassing the previous tie they had with the Lakers at 17 titles each. Jaylen Brown is your finals MVP. Well-deserved. Here's a funny note for you, though. I think this is hilarious. In his one season at Duke in 2017, Jason Tatum led Duke, not Maryland, led Duke in points, rebounds, and assists. He was not the most outstanding player of that year's ACC tournament. This year, Jaylen Brown led the Celtics in points, rebounds, and assists and did not win MVP of the finals. I thought that was pretty funny. Jaylen Brown was great, though. He was really, really good. I thought Tatum was good, too. He just didn't score very efficiently. He had some trouble with his shot, but he was still really good at facilitating and rebounding, obviously. Celtics were a better team. That's all it comes down to. They were the best team in the NBA all year. Not a lot of people talked about them because it was kind of boring how good they were. They just sort of went about their business, got it done, blew teams out all the time. One other fun note, my favorite note from this championship, 3 years in a row, a Kansas Jayhawk has been an NBA champion. This year, my guy, Svi Mikhailuk. Last year, of course, Christian Brown. And the year before that, Andrew Wiggins.
I think we're at 7 years in a row where a former Wizard.
Really?
Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis this year.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it seems like they can get good players, but they just can't put it all together.
Don't have enough good players at any one time. So that's it for the NBA season. The draft is, a week away? I think it's next week.
Isn't it the 25th?
The NBA draft will take place on the 26th and 27th. Yeah, next week. A week from tomorrow, and they're doing 2 days again, or for the first time. The worst draft in terms of ceiling in NBA history, and it's the year that they now are doing a 2-day draft. It's not going to work.
We'll be talking about Johnny Furphy next week, though.
That's true.
I do believe he was invited to the
Green room.
Yeah,
he get a green room invite. Tough scene for the people who said there's no way he's going to be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
I used to be, for a long time, stay in college, work with Bill Self or Jay Wright or Roy Williams or whoever, get better there. You'll get quote unquote exposure, and then you can go to the NBA and you'll be fine after that. I have totally changed my mind. I still care about college basketball more than the NBA. I love college basketball. I do. You can get you can get good development in the NBA. It's the top league in the world for a reason. You can develop once you get there. So it makes all the sense in the world, especially in a draft this bad. That tells me Johnny Furphy has a promise.
Yeah.
That tells me someone promised Johnny Furphy he is going to go in the first round. So good for Furph. I'm very, very happy for him. NHL Stanley Cup Final. Game 5 tonight. They are back in Sunrise. The Panthers have a chance to slam the door. They're up 3-1 on the Edmonton Oilers. Will they get it done? Who you got in Game 5?
I think the Panthers are going to win on home ice.
I think so too. They did lose 8-1. That was crazy. That came out of nowhere.
But they had all those travel issues getting there.
It felt fluky for sure.
Yeah.
It happens. It happened to the Celtics. They lost by 38 in Game 4.
Exactly. I don't know. Maybe something's just rigged.
No,
if they win tonight, right? The Panthers, and they win the Stanley Cup, the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals won by a team that couldn't get the game 4, and they were blown out in that game.
Yeah.
That would be wild to me in the same year, right?
It would be very weird. Very, very, very weird. I am going to go, though, with the Panthers as well. I think Florida gets it done. That's the playoff roundup. Maybe if the Panthers win tonight, that's our penultimate one of the season. Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
We'll have to recap on a Thursday.
I know.
A very quick recap of it.
Yeah, no kidding. But that'll do it for the playoff roundup, and that will also do it for today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. When we come back, a major trial involving the NFL, which could change the way we consume NFL on TV. We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio. Brendan, Spencer, and Trenton with you on 580 Sports Talk, live from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio high up on Huntoon Hill. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We've got a question from Vance on YouTube. He says, I've got a question about the automated ball strike challenge system. Is the batter the only one that can initiate a challenge, or can the pitcher challenge also? The batter and the pitcher and the catcher can all challenge a ball or a strike. They all have the ability to do so. So the other thing that's worth noting for AAA, at least in the International League, you are only going to get 2 unsuccessful challenges per game. In the Pacific Coast League, you will continue to get 3 unsuccessful challenges. The reason I'm saying unsuccessful is that if you challenge and get it right, it's not a strike against you, essentially. It's just, oh, yeah, you challenged it. It was right. Let's move on. If you get a challenge wrong, that's effectively a strike against you. So in the International League, you'll only get 2 of those. In the Pacific Coast League, you'll still get 3 challenges for the rest of the season. And again, it's a pretty quick system. It moves efficiently. It moves effectively. I think this is overall a very good thing for the AAA games, and I think this is a very good thing overall as well for the for Major League Baseball when it eventually gets there, and it will. This is a clear sign to me. It will be coming at some point to Major League Baseball. The news I wanted to tell you about from the NFL, though, Roger Goodell was on the stand today, and he told reporters he thinks it's the first time he's ever had to give a testimony in a federal case before during his tenure as NFL commissioner. So,
that was a committee looking into.
Yeah, for like an actual federal trial.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Dan Snyder one, but that wasn't a real trial. So
this is from Joe Reedy of the Associated Press. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell reiterated during testimony in federal court Monday that the league's Sunday ticket package, the subject of a class action lawsuit, is a premium product, and defended the league's broadcast model. He was called as a witness by the NFL as the trial for the lawsuit filed by Sunday Ticket subscribers entered its 3rd week. He was on the stand for nearly 4 hours.
Jeez.
During cross-examination, Goodell said, quote, "We have been clear throughout that it is a premium product, not just on pricing, but on quality. Fans make that choice whether they wanted it or not. I'm sure there were fans who said it was too costly." Goodell, of course, has been with the NFL since 2006, and he believes this is the first time he's been called to testify in federal court. The class action, which covers 2.4 million residential subscribers and 48,000 businesses from 2011 through 2022, claims the league broke antitrust laws by selling its package of out-of-market Sunday afternoon games at an inflated price. Subscribers also say the league restricted competition by only offering it on a satellite provider. They maintain, the NFL does, they had the right to sell Sunday Ticket under its antitrust exemption, and they say that additionally, they were able to sell it to DirecTV because, hey, look, there's a million different cable companies. We know DirecTV is all over the country. That is why we were able to sell it to them. If the NFL is found liable, a jury could award up to $7 billion in damages. However, because this is an antitrust case, the damages can be tripled under U.S. law. It could be up to $21 billion in damages. That would also obviously totally change how the NFL can offer Sunday Ticket in the future. Now, the reason this exists and the reason this is so expensive, it's very simple. The NFL is trying to get billions of dollars from NBC or from CBS and Fox. That is the reason it is so expensive, because if they offered it for cheap, people might say, well, I'm not going to tune into CBS to watch my afternoon games. I am going to just flip on Sunday Ticket, and I'm going to watch the games from wherever. I'm not going to turn on America's Game of the Week on Fox because all I care about is watching a game that's elsewhere, and I'm not going to watch the local one. So they make it so, and Fox and CBS don't want that because they want the ratings. They want the advertising dollars. This is all cyclical, and it all comes back to advertising dollars.
Yeah.
So the NFL essentially has a handshake agreement with the TV networks, CBS and Fox specifically, make Sunday Ticket so expensive that essentially it will convince most people to just say, screw it. I'll just watch what's on TV right now. That's essentially where this comes from. There was a report earlier in the week that ESPN, when they were putting together their offer to buy Sunday Ticket. If you remember last year, it was up for sale because the DirecTV deal ended. They eventually partnered with YouTube TV, but Apple and ESPN both wanted to come up with a deal for it. Apple was willing to just include it in Apple TV Plus, which the NFL obviously said no to.
Yeah.
The ESPN package included lowering the price significantly and then offering a team-by-team package. So I could sit here in Topeka, but no, I can watch every single Green Bay Packers game. You could sit here in Topeka, and for $70 or whatever, you could say, I don't get everything, but I get every Commanders game. Sounds awesome, right?
Yeah.
But you know what people would do? Well, shoot, I don't care about watching Raiders Broncos, but I do care about watching, Bills versus Eagles this week. So I'm not going to turn on CBS. I'm going to use Sunday Tickets. Only $70 to get to watch all my games. Hell yeah, that's what I'm going to do. The NFL said no. And no, we're not going to allow that because again, it would have pissed off CBS and Fox. I don't know how this is going to end. I do not know what the final outcome of this lawsuit is going to be. But that being said, if this leads us to a place where fans of out-of-market teams, such as you and I and Dan, if we no longer need to find alternative methods to watch our favorite teams and can instead just say, hey, $75 for the year, yeah, I'll pay that. I'll pay that to just watch Packers games. Hell yeah, I'll do that. I get the local games, plus I'll watch Packers ones on Sunday Ticket. Yeah, I'll do that. No doubt. I mean, that is better for everybody. And I would love that.
I think like the YouTube TV promo pricing that they did this within the last, I think it was month or something. That's even good if you have multiple people in your household that like different teams. So like my girlfriend and I split, I think $210 was what it was down to.
Yeah.
So it was $105 a person or whatever.
That's not too bad.
No, for every Commanders game and her wanting to watch every Browns game. Like, yeah.
Like I'm thinking right now, I believe Green Bay as an example. And again, it works because they're out of market.
Yeah. But it only made sense. We were actually doing like a cost analysis on this.
Yeah.
It only made sense because the teams total between the two teams have like 7 standalone games.
Yes. And that's important because if you're a Chiefs fan, let's say you're a Chiefs fan, but you live in Denver. There are a lot of them. You might say, well, I'm out of market. I want to make sure I can watch all the Chiefs games. All your games are the CBS late game, the Fox late game are in prime time. Or they're on Christmas and they're the only game on.
Yeah.
Like it's probably not worth it for you.
Speaking of, did you see that Netflix has yet to secure a producer? Like the broadcast producer for the game.
I'd probably work on that.
Yeah, like we see like NFL Network when they do theirs, sometimes they have CBS or Fox guys come on, right?
Yeah,
or NBC. Yeah, they don't have a broadcast producer company.
I probably would have figured that out before I made a bid.
Yeah, me too.
Jeez Louise. But yeah, I don't know how this is going to end. Mike Florio is going on a crazy press tour to try to tell people to pay attention to this. And you know how much I hate giving credit to Mike Florio.
Oh, yeah. We talked about this off air.
But if this ends in a situation where I can pay a flat rate that's somewhat affordable to just watch my favorite team out of market every year, I would do it in a heartbeat. No doubt about it. Coming up next, we will get you ready for Royals versus A's, the full series preview, because we're not going to have a show for pretty much the full next 2 days. We'll break it down coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk. Tonight at 8:40, the Kansas City Royals will begin their 3-game series with the Oakland Athletics. Pre-game begins at 8 o'clock. You'll be able to hear all the action right here on your home for Royals baseball since the franchise began in 1969, 580 WIBW. Tonight, it's Alec Marsh versus Hogan Harris. Fake, not a real person. There's no way he's a real guy. Tomorrow, 8:40 p.m., Cole Reagans versus Luis Medina. And then in the finale on Thursday afternoon, Seth Lugo versus Mitch Spence. This entire series is going to take place before you hear from us again. We will be, obviously you have the show today, game tonight. We are off tomorrow. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. We are taking the holiday off, so we'll rejoin you on Thursday, except the Royals play at 2:37 on Thursday, so we might not be on until 5:30 or later. Which will be a very abbreviated edition of 580 Sports Talk on that day. So just be aware that you're going to hear a lot of Royals baseball on our airwaves before you hear from us again. The A's are bad. They had a little stretch at the end of April, start of May, where they were just kind of bad. They weren't offensively awful. They're bad. They're really crappy. They're 22 games under 500. They're 26-48. Hogan Harris, who I still refuse to believe is a real person, he's got a 2.49 ERA for the season. He's pitching pretty well. Mitch Spence, who goes on Thursday, he's got an ERA sub 4. Luis Medina, he's at almost a 6 for his ERA this season. I'm not going to predict a sweep because it's hard to sweep even really crappy teams. And look, if you win 2 out of every 3 games over the course of the year, you're going to win 108 for the season, which is pretty dang good. Win this series. You really have no excuse. I know you're coming off of a handful of tough games in a row against the Yankees and Dodgers. I get that. I know you're still on the road. Get this one done. They stink. Get this done. Win at least 2 out of 3. At the very least, win on Wednesday and Thursday. Win the Reagans and Lugo starts. You cannot lose to the A's in a game where those 2 guys start.
Exactly.
You've got to be able to. That's the thing for me. You got to be able to hit in this series. You have got to get runs across in this series. The A's this season, and I want to pull this up, the overall standings for Major League Baseball.
Well, and that was going to be my point. We talked about this, I think, last week or Monday. Maybe it was yesterday. You got to get hits, and you can't have to come back.
Right.
Because Mason Miller's locked down.
Yeah, he's a star. He's absolutely phenomenal.
You can't let him pitch any of these 3 games.
The A's have the 3rd worst run differential in Major League Baseball. They've allowed 4th worst. 2nd worst in the American League. 4th worst in all of baseball. Can you name the only AL team with a worse run differential?
Chicago White Sox.
The Chicago White Sox. Dude, they don't even have 20 wins yet.
Yeah.
They are 19-54. Every other team in baseball has at least 23 wins.
Where were the Royals at this time last year, though?
Oh, God. 23 wins, probably right around that area. 20 wins, something like that. I mean, it was hideous at this juncture last season. So Royals fans know what the White Sox are going through, obviously. But yeah, it is pretty dang gross right now if you're the White Sox. And if you're the A's with a minus 92 run differential. They've given up 358 runs this year. Score. That's what this comes down to if you're the Royals. You're going to have ample opportunity to get runs across, so do it. Do not squander these opportunities against a bad pitching staff and a bad team overall.
I hope they're used to playing with like a handful of fans in the stadium.
Yeah. I remember when David Beatty, when he was coaching at KU, said that it was actually an advantage that no one came to games because other teams would be so surprised by the empty, echoey stadium. I hate that guy. I hate him so much. Coming up next, we'll wrap up 580 Sports Talk for a couple of days now with the final word. We are off tomorrow for Juneteenth. We will join you after the Royals game on Thursday until 6. That might be an hour. It might only be 15 minutes. We'll find out in the 5 o'clock hour on Thursday. So before we get there, we've got to wrap up today's edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word. Take it away, Spencer Dupuis.
The Royals, they're in a great spot right now. And Brendan and I were just talking about it off the air. I was asking him what it was like to have to talk about this team in years past, and he said it was not great.
It was bleak.
Yeah, very bad. And he said, he gave me an example of something they talked about to lead off the show, and I was like, I could not imagine talking about a Chiefs contract for a guy that is a rookie or a second year guy in June.
Yeah.
Like, what? So much good times are ahead for these Royals, and you just gotta enjoy it as the days go by. And hopefully Mason Miller is not on the mound at all in the next 3 days for the Oakland Athletics.
Final word for me today. Last night, we determined a major United States sports championship. And if you're not a Celtics fan, or you're not like Mr. NBA Hoophead or Mrs. NBA Hoophead, no one cares. Like, nobody made a big deal about it. Not the TV partners, not the NBA itself. It is bizarre. If you really want people to treat your league like the big deal that you should want it to be treated like, go act like the NFL. That's not always the best advice, but they make every single thing feel like a big deal. I remember as a kid, the NBA Finals felt massive. All we got this year was a commercial with Dwayne Wade and more videos of Stephen A. Smith in the bowels of various stadiums. That's not what people care about. People care about tradition and pageantry and big events. Do something better than that. Come on. You'd think they would do a little bit more for a team's 18th championship, but apparently I was wrong about that. Again, no show tomorrow. Very little show coming up on Thursday. We'll have a full show for you next on Friday. We'll have a jam-packed guest list. We'll all be back. So for Trenton, for Spencer, I'm Brendan. This has been 580 Sports Talk from the Kansas Drive to Zero studio.